expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solo.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before he's last. Dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him. And they call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still performing extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the ace, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Okay.
Distract name.
HP, they opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage, they want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his AD carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series, it seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo Boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang, Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up, come on,
I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solo.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before he's last. Dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him. And they call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still performing extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but That's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact fall.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the eight, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
Normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Soulpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good death running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series, it seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang. Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up. Come
But
on,
I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same song.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Scroll in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him, and the call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one, can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly,
They
still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out, simply tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact fall.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth.
Welcome back, Risen Faithful, to another week of Premade Dominant action. It's week 6. We're approaching the coveted playoffs here for Premade Dominant. Of course, I'm joined once again by Jay Turbo and Graham at my side. Now, guys, as much as I would love to touch on a bunch of pre-game stuff for our matchup between Team Fried Chicken and, the Arrogant Owls, it sounds like we're about to get into draft already. So I will talk to both of you guys on the other side of draft to break down it. Take it away and get us set for game 1.
Yeah, we're hopping into the draft real quick. These teams loaded in the lobby throughout those draft lulls, and now looking to start things off pretty solid. Team Fried Chicken with the Orn ban.
Yeah, no, they were raring to go for this one, so a little bit of time for our host, but we'll come back to him. But Ornn being taken away, Graves, of course, also meeting it. Both these champions have been really solid in the meta, depending on playstyle and sort of the angle that teams want to take. Ornn being the more supportive top laner, while Graves is the more aggressive jungler. So seeing both these taken off, given their respects where they need to, and it'll be interesting to see how they kind of follow up with the rest of this, because the Ornn ban does sort of tell me that they want something a bit more aggressive in the top side.
Yeah, definitely speaking to wanting that aggression, not wanting to concede that Ornn and provide some free scaling over to the Arrogant Owls. Both of these teams really looking to sort of continue their statements where Team Fried Chicken currently undefeated and Arrogant Owls looking to even out their season, currently sitting at 2-3, where TFC, again, 5-0. We saw them last week take that top spot, as it really is going to be looking forward. TFC trying to secure their seeding, but the Arrogant Owls want to make sure that they've got some contention as the Caitlyn and Seraphine taken off the table.
Right, Arrogant Owls will be fighting for the next stage of this tournament, actually being able to move on. They're 2-3 right now, so if they're able to win this week and the next week, they'll be in quite a good standing to move on. But for now, they have to get past TFC, who is currently undefeated in Risen, which will be quite the tall order. But let's see if they can actually match it. A lot of these bans are fairly standard. The Heimer hover is interesting. We did see a lot of Heimer support yesterday at Worlds, but
Gotta love Barrel.
I don't think it will be the lock-in, as the Hecarim will follow. Everything here is very much standard. Caitlyn's super strong laner, and Maokai first pick is something that, if you've been keeping up with Worlds or even just our weekly broadcasts, actually, you'll know quite a bit about how strong this pick is.
Yeah, the Maokai, an absolute monster. I mean, I just remember watching in week 1 of groups, seeing Odo like 1v4 for 3 minutes, basically. That's what it felt like, because you just stay alive forever on this pick, and he provides so much utility, has so much healing, and has just become an absolute menace on top of his triple flex potential.
Yeah, and that last part that you kind of sped through is actually the most important part for this Maokai. He is playable in all 3 roles, and not only is he playable, probably one of the best champions for each of those roles. Support is probably his weakest role, but for top, jungle, and support, you would all consider them at least an A-tier pick. And that's kind of the sort of problem that Maokai presents, is that you can flex him to so many different roles. But of course, speaking of high-tier picks, we have Sylas and Aatrox, which are 2 champions that you definitely are aware of if you've even watched a single game of Worlds, because these are pretty much 100% presence.
Yeah, Sylas and Aatrox both very strong, and now TFC banning away the Ornn. This feels to me that they wanted to secure that Maokai for themselves and not run into this sort of neutral top lane tank state, and instead are just going to allow that weak side as the Aatrox is picked up for the Arrogant Owls. This Heimer hover is going to get locked in. So still a lot of flex potential for TFC, assuming that Heimerdinger could go bot lane, but I think that we've seen it. I think we saw it last week on the bot kill.
Yeah, for those of you who did not watch last week, we actually did cast TFC versus Oblivion on the mainstream, and this exact matchup came up. The Sylas counterpick with Heimerdinger is actually something that TFC played last week, and they'll be pulling it out again, which I think was super exciting because it's so punishing to try and play that melee matchup into the Heimerdinger. But of course, there's some leeway since mid is a very short lane, so it is a bit more easy to get that wave to you and sort of collect XP and gold wherever you can, but it is still very difficult to deal with. But the Kai'Sa being picked up, followed along with the long-range engage from the Maokai after the buffs to his ultimate speed, makes it super easy for Kai'Sa to find targets. That being said, though, there's not many targets that you want to go on it at this point in the game. Sylas and Aatrox are definitely not ones you want to jump on. Tristana is also one that's a bit dangerous, so we'll see how this Kai'Sa pick plays out. If it gets fed, then of course you can jump on whoever you want. You're going to be Kai'Sa, but Tristana is a more traditional counter to the Kai'Sa, being more long-ranged and more aggressive early on.
Exactly, having that early aggression, and that's a bit of what we're seeing at the Arrogant Owls. Of course, the Aatrox and the Tristana both spike pretty hard early on. Tristana just at the level 2, Aatrox level 6, super tough to deal with. Whereas I really do like seeing TFC just use this Heimer as a Sylas response. Again, as you mentioned, it's so hard to play. And this Kai'Sa now able to work with TFC as they've started to set up this bit of a team fight composition with the Maokai and the Heimer, like to control that space, but also can just stall out the aggression that the Owls want to put together.
Right, and for the second round of bans, I do want to see a bunch of these engaged sports be taken off the table, because both teams really want to actually be able to engage on this. The Tristana with plus a Rel or a Leona can be extremely devastating. We'll see the Leona be taken off there, or even just the Amumu. And Kai'Sa, of course, loves to have that extra oomph to her engages as well, so we'll see how they've been. Of course, Arrogant Owls being on the red side, they will have first choice of the supports if they so choose to, assuming they want to counterpick, I'm guessing, their jungler out of the available options, unless there's something else crazy that can go on. I didn't see anything like an Aatrox jungle or even a Sylas jungle like that, but you never know. Could pull it out at some point. But looks like with the Nautilus taken off, I would look towards maybe a Rel pick here for Arrogant Owls, as it's sort of the most natural next in line.
Yeah, Rel being that next in line as far as engage, because the support pools are getting pretty pinched as we see the Amumu, Not, Renata, Leona, and Seraphine off the table.
Yeah.
You know, 5 out of 10, that's 50% presence for just supports. Really not wanting that aggression and also not wanting some of that playmaking potential. As Arrogant Owls gonna need to find something. Are gonna go for that Jarvan in the jungle, so sticking to that dive skirmish heavy style they've already started to put together for themselves, leaving themselves open for that last counter pick for support.
Now, I'm going to be a little bit of a devil advocate here. What if that's Jarvan support?
It
This is
could be. I love
could
Jarvan
be.
support.
We
Very
do have
possible.
a friend that loves that pick, by the way, but I don't think it will be. It's a little bit more of a specialty pick, but the option is there. You know, it's not
It exists.
Yeah, it exists, but with the Thresh locked in, I don't think you want to play Jarvan into that. I feel like that the play is a bit too strong in that matchup. So will be Kai'Sa Thresh, though. Of course, Thresh is a very good defensive pick overall and can enable Kai'Sa in certain ways, depending on the hooks hitting or even just flays, being able to provide space for the Kai'Sa to free hit on the things like the Sylas and the Aatrox, but the Urgot pick into Aatrox.
Yeah, the Urgot. I don't have any indication how this matchup goes. All I'm thinking of, Urgot kind of ranged, can try to chunk out the Aatrox, but other than that, do you have any insight on sort of how this top lane matchup's going to go?
Yeah, so this one's a bit of a weird one because it's technically not terrible for the Aatrox. It's not a hard counter like you would see something like a Fiora or an Irelia, but rather it kind of works to whittle down the Aatrox and sort of poke him out of the lane. Yeah, Aatrox will take Doran's Shield and be able to sustain through most of it, but it's more of the fact that once you hit that level 6, you'll be able to have that execute, and even though Aatrox will probably have a lot of healing, if you can just get it to that threshold, you'll be able to execute it, and that healing won't really matter anymore. So it's a little bit of a skill matchup, in my opinion. It is Urgot favored, but it is definitely a more specialty counter. Like we saw the Singed into Ornn, I believe, last week is another example of that type of specialty counter pick. I think Urgot will fall just in line to that, but the Alistar being picked up on the other end.
Yeah, Alistar to round out the draft, and with all of the picks being locked in, we're going to bring Slayer back in and get our whole analyst desk together.
Wow, thank you guys. It's crazy. Am I going to be allowed to sit here for more than 15 seconds this time? I just want to make sure. Or do I have to get everything out very quickly? That is certainly an interesting draft nonetheless. Here we got Team Fried Chicken versus Arrogant Owls. A lot of great things to point out. What I find most intriguing, guys, is the fact that we're on 12.19 now, right? So there were a lot of pretty impactful changes to the meta there, but this map so far, this match and this draft so far, Graham, really feels like we're still on that Worlds patch with some of these picks.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, all of these have seen some amount of presence at Worlds. I think, obviously, the Heimerdinger support is a little bit of an exception for yesterday. I know English, but the Heimer support was a bit of an exception. Obviously, we haven't seen it that much, but recency bias kind of brings it up a little bit. But Tristana Kai'Sa has been really popular, especially for the more aggressive ADCs. We see Gala playing it a lot. We see Deft using these champions a lot. So very, very important to actually use these picks and actually play around them. And that's exactly what I think Arrogant Owls is going to be doing with the Jarvan and the Alistar. Very easy to set up for a lot of the Tristana. Well, on the other hand, you have the Maokai and Thresh to support the Kai'Sa, but it sort of comes later on into the game. Kai'Sa is not necessarily that good early on. Of course, she is still a pretty solid early game champion, but she mainly wants to play around that Q evolve when she finally gets it, and then her E evolve later down the line. And so you're going to sort of see phases in this game where Arrogant Owls are going to probably take over a lot of the early game, using the Tristana, the Jarvan, and the Alistar to sort of make their way through bot lane. And as mid game comes through, provided that Arrogant Owls aren't snowballing that hard, you'll see the Kai'Sa, the Thresh, and the Maokai start to make more leeway for a lot of these objective fights, especially buying time for the twisting advance.
Yeah, that is certainly such an impactful ability in any comp structured in this specific way. But one of the things you touched on, when you look at the, Team Fried Chicken comp, they have a lot of bulkiness, a lot of ability to protect a Kai'Sa, protect a Heimerdinger. But when we look at the damage factor, and you kind of alluded with the snowballing, J Turbo, you got an Aatrox, you've got a Silas, and you got a Tristana. You got to at least back the damage department for the AWOL side.
Yeah, they definitely have plenty of damage coming into this. Jarvan, if he gets ahead, can also be part of that snowball. Of course, any of these champs that they get ahead can completely take over the game. But I'm going to say I really like TFC, how they've structured their responses, where you see this opening Maokai, it's very, very safe. It can be a pretty beefy front line to this Silas, to this Aatrox that don't necessarily one-shot or won't burn down this tank too quickly, so there can be that extended healing back and forth. But also, looking at this Heimerdinger, it's going to deny so much space from the Silas and the Aatrox so they don't get a clean engage out of the Jarvan or Alistair. And same with this Urgot. They can just buy so much space that it'll be hard for this damage to really reach the Heimer and the Kai'Sa. And Maokai and Urgot, they put out surprising amounts of damage as well. So I think, if anything, it's Arrogant Owls who, while they have a lot of damage, might not be able to survive all of the damage coming out of TFC, so long as TFC plays their cards right, because it's very easy to fall behind on this Urgot, and he's useless. If this Maokai's too squishy, he's useless, and if this Heimerdinger falls behind, he'll be useless.
It's such a great perspective to look at it. But guys, I want to take us a little bit more big picture before we get into predictions, because there's one more factor that I wanted to touch on before we got into draft, but unfortunately didn't. We're getting towards playoffs, right? And obviously, Team Fried Chicken 5-0. They basically have a playoff spot locked up. But Arrogant Owls, we take a look at the top 4 spots in this division. They get a shot to playoffs. Arrogant Owls, there's a couple 3-2 teams. They're 2-3. They're battling it out. Graham, how much of a factor do you think maybe the hunger to get into the playoffs is for the Arrogant Owls? How that will play in versus a team like Team Fried Chicken, who basically have the spot locked up?
Yeah, I do think that does play a very important role in actually a lot of in how teams play, because they're going to be a bit more driven to make things happen in ways that they're probably going to be a little bit more reserved earlier on. But now they're thinking, okay, we need to win this game. We need to go for it all. And that's going to be a very big decision maker mentally for a lot of the players on the side of Arrogant Owls. Because as you said, they're 2-3 right now. They're not out of the race. There are still a few teams. There's, I believe, one team below them was sitting at 0-5, which I believe mathematically is completely eliminated. But if you're able to win here versus TFC and then win your next game next week, then you're going to be in a very good position to actually secure at least some type of tie-breaking, looking at statistics type deal for moving into playoffs. So I think Arrogant Owls are going to be extremely motivated to actually go into this game and try to win it all.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Graham. I do want to quickly update the standings because I know we're kind of speculating a little bit. Arrogant Owls, they're the only 2-3 team, and there are 3 teams ahead of them that are sitting at 3-2 right now. 2 of those 3-2 teams are in playoffs right now. So it is neck and neck right now, and certainly would like to see the Arrogant Owls make a push, and we'll get into predictions here to see if they'll make a push for Game 1. Based off the comps, based off everything you know now, J Turbo, which side are you leaning for Game 1?
I'm going to say, while on paper, the Arrogant Owls have a very meta composition, it's very direct, they have a lot of power picks, it's pretty easy to execute. What we saw last week out of Team Fried Chicken is when they're counterpicking, they know what they're doing. They will pull out these really interesting picks, like we saw the Heimer into the Silas, now this Urgot into the Aatrox. These are intention. These aren't random picks. These aren't just, oh, I had a good solo queue game. We understand this matchup, and we know that we can win it. So I really like Team Fried Chicken's chances, but I think that the hunger buff might help out Arrogant Owls. So because of their structure and because they've got that hunger, I'm going to go with the Arrogant Owls, but I'm going to say Team Fried Chicken really have a strong shot at this one.
Ooh, okay. All right, so get a little spicy for Game 1. Maybe some spicy fried chicken now that you're picking against them. But, Graham, are you rocking with J Turbo here? What are you thinking? Are you taking the momentum buff, or are we calling draft diff? What are we thinking?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off by saying that I agree with everything that John said. By the way, it's absolutely correct. I mean, extremely standard meta draft from Arrogant Owls, very easy to execute, has a lot of power picks going for them. They can play through mid, bot, top lane, whichever they may be. Each role can carry. And so I will vote for Arrogant Owls, but mainly because I just want to see the good storyline. I think the mentioning of TFC having really good counter picks and being able to utilize these matchups effectively is a very good point, and I think that it will be a very difficult match for Arrogant Owls to win, because the Heimerdinger, when we last saw it, was extremely brutal to the Silas. The Urgot, I'm very excited to see into the Aatrox, because I think I only saw it once before when Evie played it in playoffs, or play-ins, excuse me. But we'll love to see how that goes. And so I think it'll be a very difficult game for Arrogant Owls to go for. I still will vote for them though.
Wow, I love it. I love that you guys are both backing the Arrogant Owls, and I'm going to sit here and ruin it because I'm going to back Team Fried Chicken. As much as they are, structured into a playoff spot right now, they do have a team breathing down their back for the top seed. Seeding means a ton as well for playoffs, so I think they're going to come out the gate and get a big game 1 win. And I don't need to harp on it anymore. It's exactly the logic I was thinking. I think this Heimerdinger, I think the solo lanes for Team Fried Chicken may pick up for the fact that bot is going to be prioritized by the Arrogant Owls with a Tristana, with an Alistar that want to go in early. I think that Heimer and the Urgot are going to be able to boost up the Kai'Sa enough that by the time we come to mid-game, that front line is just way too much. But to see how wrong I'm probably about to be, we will have to go to a quick break as we get through Spectator. And on the other side, Jay Turbo and Graham will have you covered for game number 1 between Team Fried Chicken and Arrogant Owls.
To the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang, Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice 200 keep with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him. And they call comes back in the circuit, but finds one. Can she find 2? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage to Treble back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still performing extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the game, and they look to take the game.
And then as we
And welcome back, as we've got the Arrogant Owls in the red, Team Fried Chicken in the blue, as the Owls are fighting for their potential playoff spot, while Team Fried Chicken are racing for that top seed.
Very much so, and it looks like we'll have a pretty standard laning allocation here. Of course, a bot side, we'll see Team Fried Chicken looking to get some type of early ward in that middle bush, allowing them to get early push on pretty early into the lane, but looking at rune summoner spells, as I always love to do, both ADCs are rocking the Lethal Temple. Of course, that has been quite a hot topic for a lot of the ADCs, especially since both these ADCs don't traditionally run Lethal Tempo. They actually used to be Hail of Blades champions, but of course the rune has become so popular and just so strong in any ADC that can potentially run it. It's going to be run both these games. The interesting one that I do want to point out, though, is that the Sylas has taken first strike into the Heimerdinger matchup. And I don't necessarily think that that's a good idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I was looking over and I'm like, Bullet Rune, how much money are you realistically going to be getting because you're so zoned out? And even if you are going Q-Max, is that really garnering you the value that you want out of your first strike if you're just getting 1 or 2 Q hits to proc it?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily worth, but at the same time, you can argue that, well, are you really going to be proccing Triumph versus a Heimerdinger? Probably not, right? But I feel like in the later fights...
Fleet Footwork.
Fleet Footwork is probably going to be the best option for a lot of the laning. I would say Conquer, if would be a bit more valid just for the later team fights. You allow more healing, more AP damage just towards that front line that we talked about in draft. But I think you're right. Fleet Footwork is probably one of the better options into this Heimerdinger. So we'll see. We'll have to see how it plays out and if he's able to get good value out of that. But the Heimerdinger did take Barrier, just adding a little bit more defense onto that mid laner, making sure that, yeah, even if you gank me, I'm a Heimerdinger, you really can't. But just in case you do, I have the Barrier to make it just that much more difficult.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing I was also going to ask you about is this is a Barrier Heimer. Is actually Random Capitals does go in, but stuns up a turret instead of the Heimer and will just walk out worse for wear. But the fact that this Heimer is going Barrier, very much playing for that lane or for that fight potential, and won't have teleport for any cross-mapping, which means Arrogant Owls with the TP advantage.
Right, and it does kind of speak to a lot of the game style that we want to have. We want to make sure that for the Arrogant Owls, we need that teleport for the Silas to be able to make plays in the mid game, teleport to fights where, yeah, we might be down in gold, but if we have a player advantage, then the gold difference won't matter because we'll just outnumber them. Whereas the side of Team Fried Chicken is just playing to say, okay, well, if we just win this mid lane and we win the top lane, then our lanes will be so far ahead of the other one that even if we're down in members, it doesn't matter. We should be able to still pull off something and maybe even trade even. So it does speak to the kind of way and the style that they want to play for each of these teams. And I don't personally think either one is right or wrong, but I do think that having a teleport is much more useful the later you go into the game rather than this Barrier.
Yeah, definitely. It is about that prioritization, as we did see both junglers finishing on their top side, but Zen is waiting in the wings to try and see if he can find a gank onto Ardru. Is going to be heading in off of this wave timer. Jordali, though, very, very low. Ardru trying to make it work. A little bit of healing. There's the flag and drag, and that's going to be first blood for Jordali in the top lane.
Yeah, and that's going to be very important that that was given over to the Aatrox rather than the Jarvan, because the Jarvan, moving forward, is going to be that more tanky supportive. They don't want the kills. Sure, a few of them early would actually help expedite the process of becoming that front line, but making sure that this Aatrox can get to what looks like it's going to be the Eclipse based on the Vamp Scepter. Of course, that did get nerfed on this patch so for fighters, so the Eclipse value will be a little bit less, but still a very strong item. Just getting a bunch of Omni Vamp onto Aatrox is always a good thing, so won't be mad about that, but expediting that top lane and making sure that, yeah, this is a losing matchup technically, but if you get ahead, then it just doesn't matter. You'll be able to kill them anyway.
Yeah, you just do Aatrox things. You just run at your opponent, press World Ender, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to out-heal you, out-damage you, and never die. As I also really like this recognition by Zen and the entire team to that when they couldn't do anything bot side, because we initially saw Zen go top to bot, he just says, all right, I'm going to clear bot to top, look for it, is engaged by Prince instead, just a little bit of disengage, as Jackie Chan was around in that bush. Was still a hover from Zen, so there might have been some fight potential, but overall, pretty neutral in this bot lane, as we're going to see a couple recalls.
The important thing to note for this bot lane, though, is the difference in items. Just strictly speaking, the buy on the longsword start for the Kai'Sa will actually make sure that you on this back will get the Noon Quiver, but the Doran's Blade means that we'll be able to get it on that back. Probably we'll have to get some type of pickaxe plus boots, but it looks like after that wave actually does have just enough gold for the Noon Quiver, so it actually will be the Tristana coming out ahead in that backing. So a little bit of managing the waves, understanding that, yeah, I could back on this wave because they're going to, but I still need that extra gold to be able to match them. Very good recognition from the side of Arrogant Owls here, and I mean, looking at the rest of the map, the top lane is just about neutralized and First Blood is on the Aatrox, and sure, your mid laner is down a little bit less than 10 gold, but overall I think you're going to be happy with the state of the game if you're Arrogant Owls, but I do want to see them be a little bit more active. They have the Jarvan available and they don't have Flash in this top side, and as you can see here, they are playing towards it and they want to look for an extra.
Yeah, already looking to that top side, looking for that regank, put this Aatrox further behind, and make a statement. This was a B5 Urgot, so that means there was some pretty heavy investment in the draft. This was intention. This was a known counterpick, and Zen, once again, looking for that, as does interrupt the dash away. A couple knockups from the Aatrox, and that's going to be a kill going down once again, but Zen picking it up this time.
Very well played. I mean, it looked like he was going to be able to get the buffer on the Urgot E. For those of you who don't really know, you can tend to buffer Urgot E very easily on a lot of pieces of CC, and it will still make the dash go through. You can do that on Tristana W. Of course, we might see that in this game actually, because there is a Tristana, or even Galio E. A lot of dashes like that can be buffered, but of course, since Jarvan is quite literally inside, a little bit of a trade on the bot lane there though. But of course, Jarvan was inside the Urgot, and you can't actually go through it. Flip happened, and you end up going nowhere. So really well played from Zen and Droidale on the top.
Yeah, and this Maokai still farming up, does just want to become that tank. And that's one thing, another thing I was thinking of is with this Maokai, as he's sort of developed as a jungler, while he does have some early game potential, you really are just banking in that hyper tank for late.
Right. You're mainly looking towards that sort of mid game once you have that ultimate, and you can start impacting a lot of the objective fights by saying, the entire river, you can't walk here. And that's the key behind Maokai and why he has become so strong, because the ultimate now speeds up so much faster than it used to. He has so much more clear speed, and why you're seeing him in jungle, and just the twisting advance being able to block off entire areas of a map is actually incredible. But engage here.
Yeah, we've gotten engaged on the bot side, and this is why you pick the Tristana, the double dash, as she's gonna hop on to that first kill, and now Organize not going to get knocked up by the Pulverize, and will just be able to walk it out. Good patience on saving that flash, but still tons of gold pumped into this bot lane.
And this is why you pick the Tristana into the Kaisa hook, though.
Oh no. This hook, oh no, caught under tower. It's gonna be Organized, turning it around. And while there's no assist for the Kaisa, still, that's a statement piece. That's saying you're going 1 for 1.
Absolutely, and what's even more painful is that they actually misclicked the Tristana ulti onto the minion of all things, and therefore not being able to pick up the return kill on the Thresh with the ulti auto, as it most certainly would have at that health range. But regardless, Organized will pick up the trade kill on the Tristana, getting a little bit too greedy without the minion wave there to protect her, trying to get the tower plate.
Yeah, just too much greed, and greed is not good, despite what you hear in some movies. As now, looking across the board, we were expecting TFC. They were, the top team in the league. They came off of a hot series last week. And now, Arrogant Owls, they're using their aggressive lanes well. They're using their aggressive potential and finding opportunities, especially in the top side.
Exactly, and I did sort of allude to this, that Arrogant Owls will have the early game potential. They will be the ones that are going to be ahead in the early game, but it's now up to them to actually transition it into the mid game and sort of weather a lot of the storm from this. But actually...
Oh, ulti stolen away, but doesn't wind up doing too much, as Random Capitals did pop that Heimer ulti. Is going to get a big turret in response, but that was very nearly a solo kill in the mid lane, as this Heimer counter isn't being as dominating as we expected. Only 10 CS up.
No, the bot kill is actually just going to take a full reset here. It says that I just burned my barrier, I just burned my ultimate. Sylas, yeah, it doesn't have mana, but if Jarvan were to come here, I'm going to have to burn my flash, and I don't want to risk that. So we'll be backing off and giving the respect they need, because they know that if the kill goes over to the Sylas in a Jarvan gank, the lane is going to be so much more difficult to try and dominate there. So good respect being paid over to it, but that also does mean that a lot of the Heimer pressure will be set off a little bit later in the game. But Maokai is actually going to be looking for a twisting advance angle here. Of course, from that range, it is a little bit easier to respond to. Tristana can buffer with the root, and Alistar has ulti available, so not the easiest angle, and they will just retreat back to his Krugs.
Yeah, and that was off of a pretty well-placed ward on the entrance to the blue side of Arrogant Owl's jungle. Did see Zen walking past, so the bot lane of Team Fried Chicken are aware that this Jarvan is likely lurking in the bushes, as once again in the mid lane, Random Capital is looking for an engage. Heimer ulti back online for the bod kill, as this Sylas going low, but will not fall.
Very, very close there. We'll have to take a reset. Interesting to see him trade that, but he does have TP, so we'll be able to get right back into lane. Won't miss anything too crazy, but oh, flash over.
Flash over, the knockback right into the Flag and Drag as the Cataclysm to clean up. Organized, still with Flash, still with Ignite, is going to be forced to use one, as AD was still taking tower, but this time doesn't misclick the Buster Shot and will find the kill, as Random Capitals off the reset just goes down to the twisting advance, and even though he picked up one of his own, will not be nearly enough.
A response kill in the mid lane, but the double kill down bot lane is absolutely massive. Tristana going to be 3-1. That Reptile won't be able to pick up the full tower. It's a bit too healthy, especially if Jarvan can whack it. And but will collect the 2 tower plates, notably only going to the Maokai. Of course, Heimerdinger was not in range to get that, so it will be a lot of gold injected into the Maokai, especially since that Silas kill went over to the Maokai rather than the Heimerdinger, so gold not quite going where they would have wanted, but of course they're going to take that nonetheless as they're sort of transitioning into the mid-game. Of course, only 1k gold difference between these teams now, despite the 3 kill difference.
Yeah, and that's going to be props off to Team Fried Chicken for finding opportunities to get this gold back. Those mid plates, finding a couple response kills, keeping things even. But I'm also going to note that this gold isn't necessarily where you want it for TFC. It's pretty loaded onto this Maokai, and even the kill in the bot lane onto Organized on the Thresh.
Yeah, you have a very valid point there, and when you look at the side of Arrogant Owls, pretty much every kill has been where you want it to be. You only have 1 kill on the Jarvan, and despite, of course, the fact that it will be a front line, he's going for that Gore Drinker, a little bit more aggressive build, not going to see a Sunfire, just full tank, so will be a little bit squishier until he gets the next few items in his build there, but does mean that the Mythic will be completed earlier on this Jarvan, will have more damage than you initially expect, and the 3 kills on the Tristana, of course, are going to be absolutely massive, as it's actually working towards the Phantom Dancer with the double longsword. I'm guessing it's Phantom Dancer. Don't expect to see any collector shenanigans coming out of it. Tristana builds are usually set in stone, but we'll have to find out.
Could be surprised. Could be some collector. Might see you ripping a few of your hairs out if that pathway does go. But in all honesty, likely going towards that PD as this Tristana does just want to scale up, as now Jordale brought into the mid lane to alleviate some pressure. Does seem with all 5 nearing this bottom side of the map, Arrogant Owls are looking towards this second Drake, want to start using that through their win conditions. And something I've failed to mention is I did want to see Arrogant Owls go for these early Drakes, provide some extra pressure, as if you have the early game, that's an easy way to force fights as the game continues.
Absolutely, and they're doing it so right here, trading a bunch of top plates down for the Dragon. As you see, Jordale is going to be teleporting back up, make sure that you can't get too much traded back onto the top side, as gold is now technically evened out, as 2 plates went over to the Urgot there, but they do have 2 dragons in their possession, so I think that you'll be sitting in a very comfortable spot for Arrogant Owls, and really I want to see them be able to force a lot of these objectives, get picks instead of trying to take full-on 5v5s, because that's where you're going to struggle against the Maokai, against the Heimerdinger, where you can't quite get onto the backline. It's too much damage, too much peel.
Yeah, as now that mid tower is going to go down, solo gold for that first tower, heading over to the bot kill, so pretty significant cash injection for the Scientist, as now looking at this map with first tower going over to Team Fried Chicken, where do you think Arrogant Owls should try and look to build this pressure? Is it in this upcoming Herald that's going to spawn in 10 seconds, or is it just running through this bot lane and taking this bot tower?
Both are viable. I want to talk on the first point that you brought up, because I believe it's the most it's the best pathway they can take. They want to be able to use things with big pressure, big impact, and sure, if you were to get 2 kills on the bot lane, then yeah, you'll be able to get something, but actually gank here.
Gank here, and the Cataclysm was enough to lock down. Argru did have flash, but realized there was no opportunity to really use it, as continued pressure and continued scaling onto this Aatrox.
Peculiar there. I think he could have flashed out of the Jarvan ulti as soon as it comes down and maybe escape, but says that, you know what, I'll save my flash for a later fight. We don't want to burn anything. We got caught. Let's just take the loss and reset, get something different. He can't really get too much, just some tower damage, and that's all. So this is a bit puzzling, but I think overall it's not going to be something too major, as the flash on Urgot is going to be extremely important in fights. That's how you're going to get a lot of picks with E-flash and other things like that. So probably what they're calculating and saying, okay, I'm just dead here. But you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Although, notable, bot tower does go over to the Arrogant Owls, as Tristana's tower taking potential is really insane, as we can already see random capitals moving down to the bot side. They're making that lane swap as they want to bring this Tristana tower taking to the mid lane.
Exactly, and of course, more importantly, make sure that this Silas doesn't get too denied of farm and XP. Of course, Heimerdinger is already about a level up, probably only about half a level, if I were to be honest. I mean, he only died once, so shouldn't be too terrible, but kill into the Kaisa is possible.
Yeah, Kaisa does have flash, does have exhaust, but just so much damage means that flash at the last second, maybe just enough, continuing to run down the lantern to safety, and just barely surviving, as taking advantage of the window is Team Fried Chicken. They're going to pick up this second Herald.
Yeah, Chaisa getting caught as the remainder of the team for TFC is actually just going to be taking the Rift Herald top side. And just as a side note, that's arguably Arrogant Owl's weakest member at this stage of the game. So, if that was anyone else, I'm pretty sure that Kaisa would be dead there. Just a sliver of health remaining. Maybe could have taken the ultimate a little bit earlier on. Maybe didn't think he needed it. Either way, we'll still be happy with forcing the Kaisa out. And I do want to note that the 2 longswords we noted earlier on the Tristan is actually going into a Last Whisper. I did kind of contemplate that, and I do think that Lord Doms is definitely the correct build here, but, you know, getting that Zeal item, getting that extra attack speed is typically on the priority list, but I do get the need. I mean, there's already going to be Ninja Tabis onto the Ergot, you have the Thorn Mail already built for the Maokai, and it's only going to get worse from here, so make sure you get that as early and as quick as possible.
Yeah, and I like this move we're seeing out of the Arrogant Owls. They're just walking into the jungle. They know that they're stronger, and Jackie Chan won't be able to kick his way to this one, but will be able to flash his way out as a great escape by the tree.
That will be the ultimate burned and the flash for the Maokai, so a lot of the engage potential from this pick is going to be hindered for at least until the ultimate's up. Of course, the flash will be down for about 5 minutes or so, depending on runes. I don't know if he took Cosmic Insight, but we'll just assume 5 minutes, as that's not really standard Maokai runes, but the ultimate will be up a little bit quicker, and I think it will be just fine for this dragon. It will be soul point for Arrogant Owls, so I do want to see at least some sort of contention from Team Fried Chicken, as they do want to take that mid game. They want to take that later on, or those late game fights where they have scaled up, they have the Kaisa on these item spikes, and they have the Maokai becoming an absolute menace in the front line. So I do want to see some amount of contention for this Cloud Dragon.
Yeah, definitely. I do as well. And this Cloud Drake, even though Cloud Soul is often regarded to be one of the worst or lowest value souls in the game, on this Arrogant Owls team, it's pretty scary because you have World Ender plus a ton of move speed. You have Alistair ulti, where he can just be invincible practically and run through your team and just pulverize wherever he wants. And also this Silas being able to just run down your team after stealing away a Maokai ulti. That is also a pretty terrifying prospect, as they're actually just going to concede this Drake bot side, instead look towards topside pressure.
Intriguing call. It's definitely not a bad idea, but it does mean that soul point for Arrogant Owls will be achieved, as a little bit of tower place over by the bot kill, and they're just going to try and take down the 2 top towers, make sure to break open the map a little bit more, as Baron is going to be coming up in a minute. I don't expect them to be rushing it anytime soon, but it doesn't hurt to have that. Teleport coming in from Random Capitals, though. It's going to be a fight.
Yeah, it looks like they do want this fight. Twisting Advance popped, going to keep running. Argru does get rooted up. The Urgot's going down, as actually does manage to dash away, still has his flash, and saves it for that last moment. The knockup not happening, and we're getting a Herald charge onto the inhib turret.
Very, very clutch escape there from TFC. Said, okay, yeah, you'll take the soul point, but we'll take top inner, we'll take top outer, and then just because you're chasing us, we're going to be able to get a charge onto the inhibitor tower. And of course, now that the Heimerdinger hasn't, he can't, he has barrier, it's going to say, we'll take the bot tower too. So getting 3 towers in exchange for soul point. At that point, I'll say that this was a worthwhile play.
Yeah, that's definitely worth it, as there's so much gold that just got picked up across the map, but also the fact that Team Fried Chicken, they're giving themselves options where if this game blows up, if they win one fight, they have an avenue to break open the base. They have tons of space to try and take a topside priority for this Baron that just spawned. And while they are going to have to fight in about 4 minutes for this Cloud Soul, that's 4 minutes that they're pretty happy to wait out, because we're seeing Mythics come in, we're seeing second items pop up for the Heimerdinger, and now they've got a gold lead for themselves.
Absolutely, and I was about to touch on the fact that even though they do have avenues to actually access a lot of those pathways, as soon as they get the Baron, they're able to shut down a lot of the members of Arrogant Owls and even break through the base. But at the moment, it is actually Arrogant Owls who has the vision advantage around that objective. You see the 3 pink wards there, and actually even a defensive ward in their own jungle. So they do actually have a lot of leeway to counterplaying, and if they do try to sneak something, they will have that vision. So we'll need to be cleared out before they try for anything major, but of course, with first rotation, the comp of TFC is going to be absolutely huge. You cannot walk into a Heimerdinger tower setup when you have no real way. You're going to be taking so much damage here. The Darwin isn't actually building that tanky. He has the Gore Drinker will be building into that Death Dance, I can imagine, with the Longsword and the Chain Vest picked up, so will not be able to tank for that long, and with the only magic damage on the team, or that's really considerable, is the Heimerdinger for TFC, there's not much magic resist being picked up by the side of Arrogant Owls. The only thing you see is that Merc Tread's there. So this Heimerdinger will shred, and it's going to be super important that Arrogant Owls keep track of where TFC is moving and make sure that they don't give over first push that easily.
Yeah, and one point that I was starting to think of is, while this Heimerdinger will shred, he still needs to set up. And the fact is, if the rest of the team doesn't follow, if the rest of Team Fried Chicken isn't getting around these objectives, isn't creating the vision, creating the space that this Heimer needs, it might be difficult to translate that shred as the game continues.
Point there, but as I mentioned previously, the vision around this Baron will be cleared out by TFC, as you see one pink ward being taken down and just another random ward taken out and another pink ward taken there. So now that TFC has complete control over this Baron area, they will probably look to try and bait something, but key point is that that one vision ward just outside the pit is actually not going to be picked up by the Squire's Bloom either, so they don't know that they still have vision on the pit. So Arrogant Owls get to have a bit more free reign on the map, saying we know you're not on it no matter what you do, so you can't really fool us into anything crazy.
Yeah, as Arger just going to deny this red steal, and he's starting to walk down Jordali. Is no mythic in hand, but still that Black Cleaver plus the Kempunk Chainsword going to be providing plenty of damage. As it does look like that we might just see a fight over this red buff. Does get picked up by AD. The bod kill running in on that Heimer and flash forced away by Zen. Big cooldown to take off the table with Dragon in less than a minute.
Peculiar, I thought you would have his flag and drag combo up. Yeah, but maybe he said, I don't want to risk it. Maybe it was still on cooldown by like a second and said, I don't want to take any damage here. But it does mean that with the flash out from Zen, TFC will have first move to this dragon. It's up in 35 seconds, so it still has a little bit to go, but I think they'll be more than happy to just sit in this river and say, you're going to come to us for this. Now, The interesting thing, though, is that Jordale is on the flank, as you can on the minimap here. It does mean that they're not going to say, okay, sure, you take the Cloud Dragon, we'll just go Baron. And that's honestly a very realistic possibility. You have Aatrox, you have Tristana, but engage onto the Heimerdinger will not result in anything but shit on Prince.
Yeah, I was going to say, not much, as now Jordale does go in off that flank. Twisting advance is taken, but that Aatrox, you said, once you get the execute, that's why this is a counter pick, is now Zen keeps going in and can't even find a kill. It's going to be a 3-for-0 in favor of TFC, as they're going to pick up their first Drake of this game.
Absolute disaster from Arrogant Owls there. They tried to get the flank, saw they were grouping up and said, we can go this, we can fight, but the other front got zoned away. The Maokai ultimate got dropped. They tried to go into the Kaisa, but with the Lantern there, it was able to get out without even burning the Killer Instinct there. And not to mention, the Heimerdinger turrets make it so that, yeah, you forced out the Kaisa, we forced out the Thresh, but if you walk through all these towers, you will just die anyway. So very good recognition from TFC to say, yeah, they're flanking us, but who cares? We'll just separate the two fronts and win both of them anyway.
Exactly, and now we're also going to see that Baron picked up. Really wish that that the side of Arrogant Owls use Jordale's teleport there, show the flank potential, and then look to sneak it away, but instead it's just going to be all the objectives going over to TFC, as they're showing that it's not just picks, it's not just the laning phase, but that transition and that team play that gets you to be undefeated in this league.
Absolutely, and you did mention just use the teleport to get to the Baron. I think it's absolutely the correct play there. I mean, even if you get the Cloud Soul, so what? Yeah, it's nice for your team, but at the end of the day, it's not a win condition that you can play to. It's not something like a Hextech Soul or an Infernal, but fight down here.
Yeah, big fight. Arger does have his ultimate and will land on the random capitals. Any more damage would have meant that Silas getting sucked into the blender of that Urgot, as now the rest of the team collapses and random capitals gonna have to run away, but he's running right into a Maokai, as that route will certainly be the end of this Silas, and I'm a Jincell will be on a killing spree after getting shut down early on.
We'll give that kill over to the Kaisa, of course. Now with Baron, 4 men mid lane, all wearing the purple buff, and can imagine that this mid tower is probably not going to live anytime sooner. They do have to wait for the wave, of course, but with Urgot sort of holding down the fort bot lane, I cannot imagine that Arrogant Owls will be able to respond in a kindly manner.
Yeah, it does just seem that they're lost for answers, as there's no way to clear out these siege minions that are just peppering down the tier 2. Is Jordalia going to step up? But again, this itemization out of Argru, and once you get 2 items on the Urgot, doesn't really matter how the early game went. He's very, very strong in the side lane.
So, and we'll be taking down both inner towers in the mid and bot lane, and we'll look to try and siege onto the inhibitor. Very giant wave stacked up on the bot side, but I don't imagine will really translate into much but chip damage onto the tower. Of course, the 3 cannons there might have something else to say, but
yeah, these 3 cannons are
popped
so
by both teams.
2 twisting advances, neither finding much. That rune onto Jordalia actually might just wind up being his death, as the bot kill gets a missile, and out of nowhere, there's a kill. There's the base broken as those siege minions putting in work, and this inhib's gonna fall.
And all of a sudden, it went from 0 to nothing real quick for TFC. Now they're breaking down the Nexus towers. They were just fighting over the 4th dragon a moment ago, but it looks like the game might end here.
Yeah, this Baron just opening the door. It's only been, as you said, a couple minutes, but TFC transitioning, TFC finding their opening, and 4 siege minions will fire down on the Nexus as Random Capital's the final stand, and a clean ace to finish this game off.
Extremely well played from TFC. Very surgical in how they played that transition. Got to the 4th dragon and said, yeah, sure, we have been sort of trading things and we haven't really confronted you at all during this entire game. We've sort of let you have your moments in the early game and say, yeah, sure, you did a lot of things. You're playing your own game plan, but we have ours. And they were able to execute it. 1 fight was all it took. There's only 1 team fight in that game that I can recall. So it was quite literally, they fought once, and they were able to end the game through that. It was very clean, very precise in how they played, and honestly really exciting to watch.
Yeah, super, super exciting. And to keep the breakdown going, we're going to be bringing Slayer back into the booth.
Thanks, guys. Wow, what a game. I feel like, you know, you guys are very good at what you do, very good at predicting based off just comps, and everything you guys probably talked about in draft went exactly how this game played out in my mind. You came out the gate, you guys talked about it, I touched on it. They focused, prioritized that bot side. You saw Jarvan gank towards bot to get Tristana going early. The Aatrox doesn't really have the hardest time against Urgot with how he can keep him at bay, even the fact that he's ranged, so he had a lead going. But once you threw that Maokai together with, you know, this Heimerdinger that's been scale farming along, and the Kaisa who maybe struggled a bit early but was able to get to a certain item power spike, once they all played together, it became pretty disastrous. And J Turbo, something I heard you touch on a bit during the game, but this kind of just felt like the difference of an undefeated 5-0 team versus a 2-3 team fighting for the playoffs when it comes to that macro gameplay out of the early game.
Yeah, it really was the fact that TFC, they knew that they didn't have to fight. They knew that they'd be able to scale. They knew how to play the map. And we saw these, as Graham mentioned, these surgical moments where, yeah, there were a bunch of members from Arrogant Owls going for that 3rd Drake, that sole point that's supposed to be this big break point. So what did TFC say? They just took 2 towers in the top side and managed to get a bunch of gold in their pockets. And again, in the mid lane, they're beating this Heimerdinger, making sure he can get first turret. And then at the end, once they get that Baron off of 1 fight, they just knew how to walk it home.
They certainly did walk it home and kick down the opposing team's door of the home and their Nexus. Is Team Fried Chicken, if you're just joining us, did take the game 1 win over Arrogant Owls. So, you know, J Turbo talked about it, Graham. Some surgical plays. You saw some surgical things going on. Now, what are you prescribing for the Arrogant Owls in game 2 to maybe switch things up and push us to a further series? Is it draft based or maybe that macro like we were talking about?
I think it was 100% macro. Maybe not 100%, but mostly macro. Because a lot of the moments where TFC were going to do something, or a lot of the moments where Arrogant Owls wanted to fight, they said, hey, we are strong right now. We want to fight at the Star Dragon. TFC just said, no, we won't. And just went top lane. And it's those types of decision making where it really separates a lot of teams, where you have a good team, sure, like Arrogant Owls, but then you have a great team. And that's sort of the decision making saying, yeah, you're going to win the fight, so we're not going to fight. We're just going to take top side. And yeah, when you respond, we'll be able to take the bot tower. And then, okay, 4th dragon comes, we've scaled up enough, we are going to fight this. And they're able to win that, and it was quite literally 1 team fight in that game that I can remember. Maybe topside you can count a team fight, but I think it was just an extended chase. But it was quite literally one team fight. We go Baron, we get the 4th dragon, then we run down both mid and bot, and then we end through bot lane. It was quite literally that simple, and they ended on the first Baron that they achieved. So it's very scary to see something like that, where it was simply just Arrogant Owls getting out-rotated around the map and outplayed in a macro sense. So I do want to see them play a little bit more towards that macro and expect TFC to take a lot of these trades and objectives with towers instead of going for the dragon, and use that in game 2 to say, okay, cool, we're going to only allocate enough to answer you, and then do our own thing on the bot side, because you can still answer a lot of what TFC was doing on the top side without committing the Jarvan and the Tristana down there.
Wow, well, certainly an amazing breakdown, Graham. And yeah, the prescription, guys, if you missed that, it fixes up some of the macro. Now, one more thing before we go to break here, J Turbo, I would like to hear you comment on this. Is, we're talking about scary hours. It is spooky season. We are getting to the point here for the Arrogant Owls. If they drop this next game, you got to think playoffs is completely out of the cards. And this is what we live for. When it comes to League of Legends, whether it's a tiebreaker game in the Hulu Theater in NYC at World Stage or Premade Dominant. How much of a factor do you think it is that for the Arrogant Owls that this next game and this series going forward has to be must win, or playoffs might be completely out of the picture?
Yeah, I think that there is a pretty significant amount of weight. You do have to be considering everything that they've been working towards, improving week to week and trying to find these opportunities to perform in the Dominate League, that they don't want to go down without a fight. They don't want to just give in and say die. And I think that this is really going to translate to the fact that if they're just a little sharper on their decision making, because we saw a lot of moments that there was just tiny bits of indecision. And if they tighten that up, they have a shot, because it was just those surgical moments that TFC was able to turn it around. And so long as Arrogant Owls can have a couple of those, there's an opportunity. I don't even know if we're going to be able to go to draft. These teams just want to keep going, keep playing, as I think they've started their second draft already.
I was just about to say, Jared Taylor, bro, there is no breaks here for the Week 6 Premade Dominant Showcase. We're going to swing it actually into Game 2 draft. These two teams already want to get back on the rift. So, J Turbo, Graham, take it away.
Yeah, we're getting back into it. We've got the Arrogant Owls choosing the blue side, as we've got a bunch of the pretty standard bans we saw last time. This time, TFC removing that Maokai. We saw how much of a terror it was in their hands. Don't want to give it over to the Owls. And Aatrox first pick.
Absolutely, we did see the Aatrox last game, and of course, it wasn't that bad. And I say that bad as if it did poorly, but it really didn't. Really, everyone on Arrogant Owls did play extremely well in the early game, but they just got out-rotated, out-macroed later on. But the Yuumi lock-in is really scary for specific reasons. I wonder if they'll go for the Sivir Yuumi that has been kind of tearing up a lot of the Worlds games, and we'll see what they go for. It should be the expected pick, but it looks like they will go for it.
There's the Sivir Yuumi. There's the second most damage in the lobby Yuumi. That's another point. Is Yuumi is no longer the Moonstone keep my team alive. It is the Luden's poke mage out of the bot lane that's untargetable. As this adjustment has been pretty interesting to see, and I'm also going to say I've got a Yuumi behind me. I've got a Yuumi just like creeping around. I knew she was coming. I could feel it.
Yeah, I was about to say, don't look behind you yet, John. There's a bit of a monster behind there, but we do have the monster in front of us this game, actually, as you did mention that Yuumi has been quite a bit of a damage threat, which is honestly kind of absurd for those of you who have played since Yuumi was released and never been like the most damage threatening champion in the game. In fact, it used to be probably the least DPS champion in the entire game, but now, of course, has been raking up a lot of damage in Worlds, especially I think a few notable games that actually, which is absolutely absurd. But Kai'Sa Nautilus is a very, very standard bot lane, pretty much as old as Kai'Sa is. So we'll be seeing that answer into Yuumi. Of course, Nautilus very solid into Yuumi. If she hops off, it's pretty much an instantaneous, yeah, we're going. And Shyvana is actually the lock-in here. Very, very farm-heavy jungler. Of course, we don't know if it's a jungler because Shyvana recently has been more of a top laner. So will be another interesting flex pick instead of the Maokai this time. It will be the Shyvana. So I'm not quite sure where we want to see that. I imagine it'll be the top, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Could be an answer into this Aatrox. I'm going to say, even though that early game went pretty poorly for Argru on TFC when he was playing the Urgot, I really liked the pick as the game continued, was able to just become that beefy chem tank effectively, and was no longer really threatened in the side lane, actually getting an XP lead, getting a gold lead, getting a fight lead, honestly, as we saw at the end with that Baron play. But now the Shyvana does have that flex potential, whereas, as you mentioned, that Yuumi Sivir is going to be pretty oppressive, offer a lot of potential lockdown, that rundown, and of course the infinite poke potential of the Yuumi, whereas this Kai'Sa Nautilus just want to shut it down as early as possible and deny that from happening. So based on these two teams, how they started off their drafts, how do you think they want to round them out?
Well, for Arrogant Owls, I do think that they want to round out with something much more standard, not very more, but much more standard. Have some type of control mage scaler in the mid lane. Have some type of facilitator jungler. Maybe not a hard facilitator like we saw the Maokai, but something a little bit more on the easier end to play. Jarvan would probably still be fine, honestly, but something a little bit more scale heavy, so that it's a bit more safer. As you can use the Aatrox Kai'Sa, you now have a really good team fighting comp. Of course, it's hard to say that into Sivir Yuumi, but if we just ignore that part for a second, Kai'Sa Aatrox Nautilus is a very scary team fighting trio. So I do want to see them sort of hammer down on that and say, okay, sure, you do have the Sivir Yuumi. It will be very dangerous to play later on to the game, but if we have our own threats to deal with, then we can sort of reach a critical mass of damage where it no longer matters.
Yeah, exactly. It is a matter of reaching that critical mass. As TFC, they want to make it harder to reach that critical mass. They just want to add some more beef to the front line. They threw down the Sejuani as, again, really one of the stars of Worlds and has just been one of those stars. Is Shyvana and Sejuani still technically a flex pick between the two, as we're finally going to get to see new Syndra on the Rift.
I'm super excited for this. You did mention that Shyvana Sejuani does make our job a little bit more difficult because we now kind of have to guess of, okay, where are these two going? But we'll be somewhere of top jungle, that type of combination. And of course, Sejuani, if you watch Worlds, I believe yesterday, or maybe the day before, I can't quite remember, but Sejuani was being an absolute menace amongst a lot of the games, going like I believe 7-0-8 in one of the games. I believe Tian played it that game. Absolute monstrosity of a champion, and we will see it come out. Very, very tanky, but the Kayn swap over instead of the Viego. This champion has been quite a menace for solo queue. Haven't seen much success of it in competitive, but we'll have to see how it goes here. It is a very solid pick into a lot of the melee champions, but Echo Hover, I do want to actually talk about
locked in!
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
now,
Echo.
Echo is an interesting champion. It is a very typical Syndra counter, in that when Syndra ulti, you just press your own ulti and you have a shorter cooldown. You also have more damage, so it just becomes a game of, yeah, sure, Syndra will one-shot me, but I can ignore that and I will just go through it anyway and then one-shot you. So very interesting draft that TFC has produced here, and it definitely works well with the Sivir move speed, giving the Yuumi onto someone and just running through the entire team. So I'm very excited to see how they play it out.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited as well. We've got teams locked in. And we can bring Slayer back in because this is looking a little less orthodox with some of the picks we're seeing out of both teams, but still very exciting for both squads.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, J Turbo. Certainly, when we talk about orthodox, these two bot lane picks, I think you could argue watching Worlds, because obviously we're all watching Worlds, are two of the most prioritized bottom lane combinations. Maybe a Felios pairing, maybe you'd justify a little bit more. I think we all can agree Sivir Yuumi is just stupid by this point. But Kai'Sa Nautilus is also a sneaky nice duo. I think the ability of Depth Charge with Killer Instinct allows for Kai'Sa to really flourish in her role as that really shape-shifty AD carry that's hard to pin down. So I think those bottom lane matchups are going to be super intriguing to watch. But Graham, I got to ask you, now that we see the comps fill out, I'm going to make you, call your shot a bit here. Obviously, the Aatrox was prioritized once again by Arrogant Owls, but who are you expecting to match up against this Aatrox, with the Urgot going pretty well towards the late game in game one?
I'm honestly not sure myself, and it's kind of the question I've been asking ever since the Sejuani was locked in of, yes, I kind of thought that Shyvana at first was going to be top lane, but with Sejuani it becomes so much more difficult to read, and that's also one of sort of the brilliancies of having flex picks, especially ones that can swap in between. But looking at the sort of way that each draft has panned out, I would actually expect the Shyvana to go into that top lane. And Sejuani does do well into Aatrox, typically speaking, just kind of super hard for Aatrox to ever truly pressure Sejuani. It's hard for any champion to pressure Sejuani, really, but I think the key is that when you look at that jungle matchup, Shyvana into Kayn, sure, whatever. But both of the champions are just going to be farming, and typically speaking, Shyvana won't win a lot of the early skirmishes, especially since Kayn can typically clear faster. And so Sejuani seems like a bit more of a natural fit because, yeah, sure, you don't clear nearly as fast as Shyvana or Kayn, but you can still win a lot of the duels there. Sejuani has a surprising amount of damage, and it can also impact the lanes much more effectively than Shyvana, and it sort of says, yeah, you're going to farm, but if my bot lane is going to be 3-0, then who cares? You're just going to get one shot anyway. So I do think it will be a Sejuani jungle. We'll have to see, and I probably will be proven wrong because I usually am horrible at these types of 50-50 reads, but that's my take.
Well, I appreciate you giving it out. Now, another pick that likes to get flexed a lot, but is pretty solidified in its role this game is the Echo. And J Turbo, I heard the excitement when you saw the Echo locked in, so I want to hear what you think about this mid matchup, but also, what do we think? You know, this is Syndra on 12.19, so this is the new look Syndra, which means this mid lane matchup is going to look a lot different than we've seen across, man, a couple of seasons of League of Legends.
Yeah, exactly. I got excited for the Echo because one of Graham and I's mutual friends, Steven, he was a huge Echo player. Then as Echo just gets nerfed and nerfed and nerfed, and a lot of his good matchups fall out of the meta, has just become a Victor one trick. That's the way it goes for some people. But I'm excited to see whether or not this counter, because again, we've highlighted and we saw it last game. TFC picked these counter picks because they know what they're doing. But considering this is new Syndra, and Echo, while he did receive a couple minor buffs, isn't necessarily looking that much better as a laner, I'm wondering if this is more so, oh, I've had a lot of experience taking Echo into Syndra before, and not as much, I really want to pick Echo into 12-19 Syndra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it'll be so interesting to watch. I've seen a little bit of Syndra. I think, you know, the ability, those shards are so intriguing to watch. So it's going to be really fun to see how that mid lane matchup plays out. Well, we've highlighted some of the solo lanes, and as we're getting through the draft on, you know, the league client side, we'll quickly go through predictions here once again. Graham, I'm gonna go to you first for this one. Are you jumping to the fried chicken team side with me like last game, or are you gonna roll with those arrogant owls to force this to a game 3?
As much as I do want to see the storyline for Arrogant Owls, and I do think they have a genuine shot at taking this game, I'm going with TFC. And the main reason is because I don't see how they can deal with Sivir Yumi. It becomes super difficult, and you need specific counters. One of the most common answers in professional play is actually going Vi with Chilling Smite to say, yeah, you're going to move a lot, but I'm going to just ult you, and if you spell shield, I'm going to Chilling Smite the spell shield away, and we're going to lock you down. But there's no real good ways to lock down a Sivir Yumi that's running at Mach 10 around your team. And so I don't see a real way to actually win against that in a lot of fights.
Yeah, I would have totally accepted the answer of Sivir Yumi diff and move on, Slayer. Honestly, by this point, with what we've seen from this duo, well, J Turbo, that puts you a bit on the next slate here for predictions. Do you think the Sivir Yumi is strong enough to just overcome Arrogant Owls, or are we getting extra League of Legends tonight?
I am gonna put my vote in for TFC, but it's not because of a Sivir Yumi diff. It's not because the Sejuani and Shyvana will become a really tough to deal with front line that there aren't necessarily the greatest tools for Arrogant Owls. It's because TFC, as far as all of the teams we've seen throughout this season, are the ones with the sharpest decision making and the sharpest recognition of, can they fight, can they not? Have they hit their breakpoints? Have they not? Do we have tower taking potential? And the fact of the matter is, if this team falls behind, if we see this Aatrox get ahead, if we see this Kai'Sa get ahead, if we see the Syndra start just beating up on the Echo, even though that Echo's a counter pick, I still think that from behind, TFC will see these openings and will just realize what tools they have in their kit and run down the game with those.
Wow, how poetic. You two, the first two reasons why I was going to rock with Team Fried Chicken this game, you both highlighted individually. That's just perfectly poetic. I am also going to back Team Fried Chicken for the second game, purely for the two reasons you guys highlighted. Sivir Yumi is very, very strong, but the bigger one, the J Turbo you touched on, out of all the things that you can correct from one game to another, I think the hardest thing to do is correct those macro decisions. Sure, maybe you get draft diff and you pick better champions in a close game. That can turn an entire tide of a series, but the macro plays I saw from Team Fried Chicken is something I don't think Arrogant Owls can correct and just completely do a 180 on from one game to another. So I'm going to unfortunately pick the 2-0 sweep as well. But to see if our predictions go the way we want them to, We're going to get through back onto Summoner's Rift where J Turbo and Graham will have game 2 between Team Fried Chicken and Arrogant Owls. Don't go anywhere.
Back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang,
up!
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Big
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him. And they call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage to Treble back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly,
They
still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out, simply tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the
don't.
and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
Normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo Boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Soulpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good depth running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series. It seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo Boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang,
up!
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys.
And welcome back. We've got Arrogant Owls fighting for their tournament lives on the blue, and Team Fried Chicken looking to keep their undefeated streak alive. I think they've only dropped 1 game so far and intend to keep it that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, but looks like there will be some cheese there. Don't think they were quite caught up by Jackie Chan, but Argru with no flash will have to run immediately. Yep, there we go.
does run away right away, and that means there will be no shenanigans. Although the bot lane for the side of TFC not going to be opting for any deep visions. Actually, they just want to keep going. They're still looking, and Argru taking that W first, not going to burn the ghost, and will result in not much for either side, as both squads are going to take their recalls, make sure they're all set up, as we're going to get a pretty standard opening game.
Very good from Argru there. Didn't actually get spotted that entire time, I don't think. Maybe on the exiting, but did sort of keep control of that top side, but it doesn't mean they won't try anything. Kane is sitting on the ward there, and we'll be able to walk up here. The trade.
Walks up, gets a trade, gets the electrocute proc, and that is a ton of damage as the bod kill already getting an early advantage.
Very brutal, and this is not necessarily a matchup where early on you're going to be super wowed by it, but as you hit 6, as you sort of get later on to the game, you'll start to see that Echo just can't really die to the Syndra, and Syndra can't really do much to the Echo, so getting that early chip on really does mean a lot for this lane, as it is still going to be a range versus melee.
Yeah, still going to be that range versus melee, so the Echo does have to play it pretty safely, but did go for the Darkseal start.
Oh, yeah.
Is feeling pretty confident. Love to see it out of the bod kill, as one potion already popped by random capitals. And one thing I do want to note as far as jungle starts is all the time that was wasted by Zen waiting in that red brush and then realizing that he couldn't go for the invade. Sejuani was able to start Raptors and is able to, keep up with this Kane.
Yeah, an interesting thing I do want to highlight for all the junglers out there. Look at Sejuani's pathing. Actually went Raptors to Krugs. And that's a very unique path, because a lot of what's happening a lot in pro play is saying, okay, we don't actually need to take our buffs first. We can just take our peripheral camps, which are going to be easier to clear, just statistically speaking, especially for Sejuani, who has a lot of sort of AoE abilities like the W that kind of hits a little bit less so, and we'll be able to clear out a lot of the low health Raptors and Krugs. So very, very smart there. Just slight optimization, of course. You do lose a little bit of time. It's not as fast as it would initially be, but it is an option to take, and it does still give you a little bit more time onto your buffs, as walk away on that will give a lot of poke onto the Syndra there.
Yeah, tons of poke onto the Syndra. This lane not going how Arrogant Owls want so far. As in the bot side, Jincell locked down. We'll try to just walk this one out, but still a pretty significant chunk going down.
Yeah, but looks like, I mean, it will be a little bit difficult to play for this bot crab, as both junglers will be ending on the bot side of the map there. Shyvana taking a little bit of a bad trade. Do want to point out, I was actually right in my prediction there. It is Shyvana top. Gotta insert that in just to make myself feel a little bit more good. But will be a bit difficult to actually get the crab, but instead it looks like Zen will be resetting, heading towards top side, trying to get that Aatrox sort of push onto the Shyvana, make sure they could try to do something there, but it does look like it will be an actual likewise read from Jackie Chan, as trade on top lane looking a little bit rough for Argru, but never mind, it will not be traded and trying to go top side, and instead they'll just trade Scuttle Crabs.
Yeah, just gonna be a Scuttle trade. Sure, Jackie Chan probably assumed that this Kane had already taken away that crab, and then realized, hey, he's still skittering around the river, so we'll be able to pick that one up. And now that early pickaxe for Zen will mean his clearing will be that much easier. We'll have a little bit of that extra early game damage, but with this back coming out of Dradali, not expecting too much pressure to start things off.
A little bit of a gank here, so I might not be able to talk too much, but it is Syndra.
And that's why it's just Syndra. He can just push you away, say, no thank you, I'm going to be here. And the bot kill, taking advantage of the Sejuani in the area, will just be able to take another chunk, as the little bit of cheese that was set up for the Arrogant Owls bot lane, denied by a well-placed ward from Organized.
Yeah, good scatter of the week there, and of course, super easy to react to something like that. Sejuani's dash is not necessarily the fastest out of all the dashes. Of course, Echo's is probably faster and harder to react to, so now once that was used, did allow Echo to get a little bit of a trade down. But after the 3-hit passive, you have to kind of back up. But do you want to talk about something that didn't really bring up at the beginning because of the early game invade? Looks like it probably will be a Gore Drinker Kane, and the only reason why I don't say that's guaranteed red is because Kanes have done a lot of weird builds this season. And it's kind of hard to sort of pinpoint a lot of things. I personally don't like Gore Drinker Blue Cane. I think it's just trying to be too much at once. You should instead just try to optimize what the champion is doing, but with the pickaxe there, it does mean that it will be Gore Drinker, as I don't think it builds into anything else Kane would want. And so hopefully we'll see a red Kane with the Conqueror. It also does typically mean red Kane, but again, Kanes have been doing wild stuff this season.
Yeah, Kane's been going a little crazy. I am also a major advocate for the red Kane, not just because it's my own playstyle, and then that's the only. and I int every game on blue Kane, as you know in some of our Clash games. But I just think that the red Kane will offer the Owls a lot more of the extended fighting that their composition really wants to do. It's pretty skirmish heavy. They're not looking for some team fight wombo combo. Instead, they just want to be able to take these extended fights with the Aatrox and the Kane. But now both junglers in the bot side, it's going to be spicy. AD forced to flash early. Great Q flash out of the Sejuani. Somehow staying alive is the Kaisa, and now the Kane comes in for a little bit of help and won't be able to find the kill onto one. The route onto the other. Jackie Chan trying to run this one out, but still first blood onto the Darkened Blade.
Oh, the flash forward on the Sivir there. Not quite enough damage on the auto attack. Had for 2 down, it looked like, and now instead cost their life. Do get it, you want to be a bit greedy, but the better play would just be back off, try to focus the Kane, poke them out, and sure, you might not get a kill, but at least you're forcing out the bot lane, and they can't respond to the wave that you'd be crashing, but instead, will be a kill over towards the Kane, meaning that this form will be a little bit more accelerated than normally expected, and will also mean a CS lead for the Kaisa.
Yeah, CS lead for the Kaisa, kill lead for the Kane. Everything looking up for the Owls. They've secured themselves about a 1k gold lead this early on, but as we saw last game, TFC understand when they don't necessarily have the early game, when they can fall behind just a little bit, as now a little more agency in the top side, not as much pressure out of this Aatrox either, means that there's still lots of tools that TFC can try and play with.
Very much so, but I do want to point out that it isn't more... The comp for Arrogant Owls isn't necessarily a all or nothing like last time. I said all or nothing like they didn't have scaling, but this team especially has a bit more scaling than last one. You have Syndra Kane, which are both very, very good late game champions. Syndra will just come and eventually one-shot a champion. There aren't many targets, albeit Echo, of course, can just ulti out and you not one-shotting a tank Sejuani or Shyvana at any time, but if Sivir missteps or misspell shields one thing, then that can mean pretty much the death of them. So you have to be careful there, and of course Kane, Red Kane, will be a menace, but nothing gonna result from that.
Yeah, not too much resulting. As one thing I do want to note is that opening kill for Zen on this Kane was onto a ranged champ, so that means more of that blue form is going to have to deal some damage to some melee champs to try and get the red online earlier. Otherwise, we'll be forced to wait out and find that extra time, as I'm of the opinion that looking at this draft, looking at this team, I'd rather have a weaker Kane for an extra couple minutes than a blue Kane with Gore Drinker for the rest of the game.
Exactly, and a little bit of an interesting itemization choice. They actually sold their pickaxe to get the Caulfields and the Iron Spike whips. So, oh, actually, no, I'm stupid. It builds out of it. My brain was not working there, but yes, all good. Ignore that.
Don't worry, Graham and I are both in our last semesters of college. It's just how it goes.
Exactly, yeah. But moving back into the game, though, First Dragon is available. It has been for quite some time, but of course, none of these teams are really looking to get anything done super early in, so maybe we'll see it now that we have Noon Quivers on their ADCs, we have first components for our mid laners, and of course some components on our junglers. We'll probably see some prioritization of this objective soon, but for now it will be Sejuani sort of sitting mid, looking for an opportunity. Does have the Glacial Prison, looking to try and snare up the Syndra. Of course, the flash did just get burned, so looks like it was off screen for me at least.
I wasn't able to spot that one either. Did just look like it was a gank from Jackie Chan in the bot kill, and forces away that flash. Is now that Chrono Break is available for the Echo, we'll be able to deny that Syndra all in, but as you mentioned, this first Drake going to be going the way of the Arrogant Owls as they use their bot pressure to their advantage.
Will be Cloud Dragon secured. Cloud Soul was last game. But Cloud Dragon will be secured for Arrogant Owls there, and they do have a pretty sizable lead at 10 minutes. About 10k, a little bit less than that, but that is, for 10 minutes, a pretty solid lead, and they'll be happy to take that, especially since most of that is actually going to be on the Kane, and it's going to be spread out sort of evenly amongst a lot of their members, but the Kane taking the majority share is something they'll be more than content with as it sort of scales into mid-game and tries to get that red Kane form that we're going to assume they're going for. I mean, usually Blue Kane doesn't take the Conqueror and the Gore Drinker. It's usually going to be one or the other in terms. So, never know, but that's what I imagine. Sejuani will be spotted out here, though. The scanner will show her that she's going to waste her time here, but looks like she doesn't care and will still go for it anyway.
Yeah, they're still just saying, we've got pressure here. We could theoretically try and threaten a dive. Good back delay by AD on this Kai'Sa, as is just going to be a wave crash and securing some space for this bot lane. But again, looking across the map, these winning lanes, these winning matchups, paying off in dividends for the Owls, currently with about a 2.5k gold lead at just 11 minutes. But now is going to be the matter of transitioning it, as that's where they really struggled last game, is now in the mid lane. Stunned up is Random Capitals, and another chunk for him as he's going to be forced to back things up.
And an interesting shift in this game compared to last is that we're now seeing TFC try to be a little bit more active. Jackie Chan trying to gank this bot lane sort of on repeat, and it's not really working out for them. And it's a little bit confusing because I do think that they have just better scaling. It's much easier to just press Sivir ultimate, Yuumi ultimate, and just glide across the entire enemy team, but they do want to try and make sure that comes a little bit faster. And I don't feel like that's necessary. I feel like they're kind of taking it a bit too fast, and they can kind of just chill. And they do have a lot of these slow moments right here where, yeah, nothing's really happening. Sure, we gave Kane the Rift Herald up top side, but we tried to make something happen bot lane, and it didn't really succeed. And it's kind of an interesting adaptation that they're taking, saying, well, we're not going to really go for the Kane here, but gank mid will interrupt everything.
Gank mid and the counter gank out of Zen and Prince, as Depth Charge does find a knock-up on a Jackie Chan. Zen with a 2-level advantage, trying to run him down. Does have that Gourd Drinker as well for plenty of extra healing, but the mobility is too much and will result in that lead. As in the top side, Argru looks to respond onto Jordali on the Aatrox, but the World Ender popped means both top laners will just step back.
Yeah, popped the ulti there. Looked like it was about to recall and then caught Jordale off guard there. Chunked about half the health, burned the World Ender in exchange for the Dragon's Ascent. That does mean that Jordale will have to take the recall. Both the top laners will be having TP available, so it'll most likely be once Argru can push that in, we'll be resetting, Aatrox TP's back, and then we'll have the chance to push wave, Argru TP's back, and we'll just reset the lanes back to neutral.
Yeah, we'll just be resetting those lanes. As where do you think Arrogant Owls can try and start pushing their leads? Because they have this Herald in hand, but haven't necessarily decided somewhere to use it. And with plates falling off in just 20 seconds, they might not be able to get that extra gold investment that you really want out of first Herald.
Well, I'm going to use my foresight here and say that since they're placing it down bot lane, they're going to use it bot lane. But in all seriousness, yep, the plates were running down, and that would be my guess anyway. They do want this Kai'Sa ahead, and it's kind of difficult to try and get something onto the mid lane. But that will mean that there'll be 100 gold given away to each member present, and I'll be quite happy to have that in their bank accounts.
Yeah, not as clean of a setup to give it to just the Kai'Sa and the Kane as you may want, but still that extra gold will be very much wanted by this bot side, as AD and Prince already very, very strong. Both ADCs should be picking up their mythics off of this reset. And now, with the Mountain Drake spawning in about a minute, that looks to be the next point of contention for both these squads.
Yeah, and I do want to step away from the game a little bit and talk about TFC as a team, because I feel like this game state sort of highlights how they kind of play here. Because there's only one kill on the board, and yet there's about a 3k gold lead in favor of Arrogant Owls. And it just kind of shows that they don't try for things early on. They don't want to fight, and yeah, they'll give away this gold lead gladly, and they don't care because they'll just play out the mid and late games much better. And it's a bit iffy because I think this is the largest gold lead I've ever seen against them, even in the 3-game series that we had last week in the early game. So I'm actually really interested to see how they can bring this back, if they can at all, or if when they try to transition to the mid lane, it ends up being too much of a lead.
Yeah, there is going to be that question. There wasn't the same tower pressure that we saw out of last game from the Heimerdinger. Isn't going to be taking that first tower. Likely is going to be this bot tower falling first. Although with Jordali coming down bot side for this Drake will mean some free time for the Shyvana, but won't be able to worry about that as Random Capitals. Great flash to avoid the Frozen Bola as Mountain Drake picked up. It does seem that both squads want a little bit more of that fight as Echo ulti to avoid the Syndra no fun button. And we've got an Ocean Soul for these teams to fight over.
Ocean Soul will be massive for either of these teams, because if it goes over to the side of TFC and the game goes late enough, I don't see how you can actually break through a 2-tank frontline with a Yuumi Sivir that has a 4-stack Ocean Soul. That just sounds so brutal to try and deal with, especially since there's no healing reduction on the side of Arrogant Owls. Yeah, I don't think they need it yet, for the record. I'm not gonna be shaming that. I don't think it's necessary in that, but they will eventually need it because Yuumi will be a problem, especially with the Ocean Soul on the Rift and as a eminent threat. I also think that is necessary evil, but we'll have to see if the game goes to that point in the first place, as the lead will extend to 4K for Arrogant Owls.
Yeah, continuing to extend, and I'm going to sort of bring up a counterpoint to what you brought up, is this Ocean Soul is very, very scary on a couple of drain tanks, like the Aatrox and the Kayn, who are looking to the top side. Argru doesn't get knocked up, does just use that Dragon's Ascent Unstoppable. As for Zen, this to me really does just feel like I'm getting those last couple red stacks. I want to get in my form. I want to figure this out as that bot tower dangerously low to falling. Won't fall quite yet. That Sivir wave clear paying off in dividends as we're going to just get picked up.
Yeah, as a quick check though, that was the Kayn Darken form, so the Kayn player in you kind of sensed that was the inting for form, but it wasn't really inting.
That's my gameplay. Inting for form. You go down 0-3, they have shutdown gold. I'm red Kayn now. What are they gonna do?
Exactly. This one is a little bit different though. It's 1-0 and trying to just did a little love taps here and there to get it off the Shyvana, but we'll be happy to collect that up as red Kayn will be there. Dive looking for TFC though.
Yeah, dive up, and Art is going to find Prince from a quick in and out. And there's nothing else to say. It was a one-shot onto the Nautilus, and good cover by Jackie Chan to deny any extra tower pressure in the mid lane.
Yeah, good rotation, and this is what we talk about when we're looking at the macro. Yeah, we just had the bod kill leave mid lane to come gank bot lane, so that means that Jackie Chan will then say, okay, cool. They're just ignoring the Kayn and going for the Kai'Sa here.
They are just going for the Kai'Sa, but remember, this Kayn's in his darkened form. There's no chrono shift for the Echo, as now Zen and the rest of the team are here for the cleanup. 2 kills already down, and this cat is going to be very, very sad as there is a double kill for Random Capitals on the Syndra.
And this is sort of what I was referring to. It feels like they're trying to be a little bit more aggressive in the early game. They're trying to make these plays happen, and they're trying to sensing that, hey, Arrogant Owls is actually getting a pretty sizable lead against us in this game, and we do need to stop the bleeding somehow. We can't just say, okay, yeah, we'll win late game, but if we give everything away, then there's no late game to be had. So they're kind of feeling a little bit of the pressure there, it feels like. But a lot of the angles that they're taking just seem a bit too forced, and it's not really characteristic of this team whenever I think of them and whenever I've seen them in the game. So I do want to see them sort of shape up a little bit. It sounds a bit weird, but I feel like they do need to sort of get together and 5-man instead of trying for these isolated picks, because that's where they ultimately succeed with this team comp.
Yeah, I think that they just need to relax a little bit. As you're saying, just cool down. Let your Sivir reach 2 items. Let your Echo reach 2 items, as we're seeing the Sejuani first item Anathemas. I'm assuming that's going on to the Kayn. We'll just try to deny some of that extra damage, as now the cat is caught, and the dive in from the Kai'Sa will mean Organized is shut down off the Rift. Herald's going to go over to the Owls as they continue to balloon this gold lead, now at about 5K.
Very interesting choice to hop off there from Organize. I mean, when you're approaching an objective like that, you usually don't want to be the one hopping off because you're the most vulnerable. But that being said, 3 ultimates being burned, but
that's just going to be a kill. There's nothing else to say as the Frozen Bowl lands, and the speed will mean they can hunt her down. So good pick, but still not quite stemming the bleeding on the map quite yet.
yeah, it's just going to be a trade of pick for pick. Of course, the Rift Herald in the pocket of Zen will mean that that pick is a bit more worth it than the other one that we just got off the back of it, but they will take it nonetheless, as gold lead extending to 5K now. It's still not getting too out of hand, and I think that's the key part. And I think that TFC in their game right now are going to be saying, we don't have objective bounties yet, so it's probably not that bad. And it can be misleading because I feel like objective bounties never go on when they really should. Like in this game, for example, I think a 5K gold lead is sufficient for objective bounties, but fact that they're not on means that the game calculates still a favorable position, or favorable enough for TFC.
It's a playable position. This feels like the chess.com analyst. It's like, oh, you're only 2 points down, and even though it feels crushing, as now both teams, they're grouping up. This Ocean Drake is on the Rift. Both realize the importance of this. It'd be Soul for the Owls, and it would be a way back into this game for the side of TFC, as it does look like the Owls are trying to keep this mid pressure leverage. Jackie Chan on the front line will be the first to get knocked up and potentially knocked down. AD on the Kaisa gonna get one. Jinstel soon to fall as the rest of the team is trying to slap down Jordali, but there's too much healing. There's too much to deal with as Argru gonna go down. That Chrono Shift not gonna be nearly enough. It's a clean ace, and now with Baron on the map, this squad is running right for it.
Ooh, and that's just showing the gold difference between these two teams. It looked like that TFC were able to actually get a pretty good position there, but Jackie Chan walked a bit too forward, got CC locked too hard, and was just absolutely burst down before the fight even really began. And that's sort of key to that. But of course, now that they're turned on to Baron, Arrogant Owls are in a very, very good position. 8k gold lead, sure to extend with the Baron take here, and now they can look to end the game. They're going to reset here, probably look for this third dragon for themselves, and then look to try and spread out their gold, make sure they can get the towers down top, mid, and bot lane.
Exactly, want to crack down these inners, that quick decision making that I called for from last game. I was saying, hey, Arrogant Owls, there are a few moments of indecision, just know what you want to do and do it. And that's exactly what we saw. They called the engage onto Jackie Chan and now have about 10k gold lead and are looking towards this Soul as Organized hops off. The rest of the team from TFC are around, but won't be able to contest this Drake, as this is a commanding position for the Owls.
It looked like they wanted to contest the dragon, but at the very end, they looked at it and said, actually, no, we can't. We couldn't win the fight beforehand. We definitely can't win it now. So let's just take it a little bit slower for now. Almost caught out by the hook there, just barely whiffed, but doesn't mean that Sejuani will take a little bit of poke there. With Yuumi in tow, it doesn't mean that it will be too detrimental.
That Yuumi will keep the Poro rider nice and healthy. As I'm gonna say, one thing out of the Owls is now there's a response on the bot side from Argro is there's no one top side, and I think that this outer is the biggest piece of standing gold really present on the map right now, as we are seeing some transition to that top side to try and knock down that last outer, but want to take advantage of the side of TFC not sending anyone up early during this Baron.
Yeah, it looked like they kind of lost track of the waves there. Thought that they would be able to just four-man brute down the mid tower, but with the fact that it is still Sivir, let's not be fooled. Sivir has incredible wave clear, so leave that wave alone for a little bit and it will be gone. So now they kind of recognize that we can't brute force it with Sivir Yuumi there. It's too much. Let's just take the top tower. They did see a couple pings go down there, and Kane will be instead solo laning instead of the Syndra, determining that the little bit of safety from the Scatter of the Weak is a bit more important for the Kaisa Nautilus instead of the straight up just front line that the Kane will provide. So we'll use that to sort of rotate into the bot lane here, try to get something out here. Stun.
Big stun to Argru, and again, Flashless Shyvana. That's going to be another quick kill, and this is going to be the bot inner falling in just a couple seconds.
A good use of waves, push in the mid lane there, uses that to rotate the Nautilus and Syndra down to the side lane, and overall was able to get the kill, get the tower, and now they can use that pressure to then rotate back up to the mid lane, have 4 people trying to push for this tower.
As the Kaiser just barely able to escape the stun, and while that W goes wide, still going to be another stun onto this Horror Rider Sejuani, and the tower goes down, means the fight is triggered, although a few members caught up. Prince with a great stopwatch to slow things down as the bot kill looks for a multi-man stun, but just gets blown up in the process, as this 4v5 not at all going the way Team Fried Chicken wants, as it is all looking up for the Owls.
And it was so close to looking like a decent fight for TSC, but the stopwatch coming through on Prince. The Echo Ultimate not actually going through on the bod kill. I think that was a very crucial flash hit. Got the stun onto, I believe, 3 members of Arrogant Owls, but was not able to rewind time, get the health back, and maybe get some damage chip on the way. And at the end, have to back off. There was no R group in that fight, so it was ended up being about a 4v5, if I remember the numbers correctly. So still, it was a very good angle to try and find from TFC. Good recognition that, hey, this is actually doable, and it's a slight problem with the execution.
Yeah, as the Baron, now that buff is expired. Did manage to take 2 inners, weren't quite able to find that top inner, but still 3 towers off of that Baron power play, and now the all-important timer, 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes now, for that Ocean Drake, for that Ocean Soul for the Owls.
It will be a very important one, as of course, do have quite a large amount of drain in with an Ocean Soul. It will be quite problematic, and of course, when you're so far behind in a game, yes, I'm sure they understand that they need to build Grievous Wounds, but can they really afford that luxury? They just got their core items online, and now they're going to look towards those luxury items. Probably going to be a Chemtech Putrefier for the Yuumi next, but that's only an Amp Tome in the inventory so far, so it is super difficult to try and deal with a lot of these drain takes right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to mention is how expensive this Luden's Yuumi build is, that if you fall behind, there's not much that you can really do if you need to get that Putrefier, if you need these other more supportive items, because you're so invested in that poke game. And considering this Ocean Soul might be taken, that poke is now going to be effectively meaningless.
Exactly, so might have been a good recognition on organized ends to say, actually, I'm going to go for the more value, and to say, I'm going Shurelya's or I'm going Moonstone. Of course, that's hindsight, so we can't necessarily say that that was... Of course, we can say that now. Should have gone for a support item so that you would be a bit more better on your way. But, you know, in the moment, they weren't actually that far behind, and it still looked feasible. Of course, now in this current situation, can't really say that, but it was still a worth note thing to bring to our attention.
Certainly is. As this just might be a one-shot onto the Sivir. Very, very low. Random Capital's not taking too much damage. Use that zone just to buy some more time. Although this Sivir stays alive until the World Ender is popped. Argru gonna go down as a rampage for Random Capitals. Organized can't make it back to the team. And this Ocean Soul will be going over to the Owls. And they want an ace to go with it. The bod kill gonna fall to Prince. And the only survivor will be Jackie Chan on the Sejuani.
And at this point, it's just brutal to try and fight your way into your own jungle for the side of TFC. Can't actually get anything there. They see the Syndra on the side, but just a quick QE takes out half of Sivir's health bar there, and was just barely unable to not pick up the kill there, of course. With the Void Staff, the Leandries, and the Morellonomicon will be sitting quite pretty, but they'll just turn onto the Baron and say, yeah, sure, we could try to break over the base here, but we want to take this slow, we want to take this methodically, and make sure that we don't make mistakes and potentially throw the game.
Exactly. They know how far ahead they are. They know that they can take this luxury, as now with a 15,000 gold lead. Actually, a little more than that. This is the strongest position we've seen the Owls in, I think, all season. And also the weakest position we've seen out of TFC. We mentioned that it was unheard of to see them 5k down in the early game, and now they're 15 down, or 16.
Yeah, and it's going to be absolutely crushing from here. There's very, very little that they can do to actually come back into this game. I think their best shot is just say, we still have Sivir Yuumi. We can come in if we give them the space, if we give them the time. And as you can see, the Sivir wave clear, even on the Baron minions, is absolutely phenomenal there. And it's going to be super difficult to try and push, even though they're this far ahead. So I think they have to play for that. But it is so difficult, as you can see there. The QE from Syndra can just lead to a straight up kill. And if you're not, you have to be ready with the spell shield there. Button is pressed though.
Engage pop, the Frozen Bola finds a shutdown for one, and the TP in response. They see an opening, and they are taking it. No Aatrox, no problem, as now the dive in from Dragon's Ascent. Gotta remember, though, there's still a couple Darkins weaving their way into your backline. AD's too big. The Kayn is godlike, as Argru forced to run away, and Jordale will 2v1 the Sivir Yuumi. Doesn't care about the Sivir Yuumi diff, doesn't care about those stats, and we are getting a game 3.
Yeah, and again, it looked like such a good angle from TFC. They got the initial pick onto the Syndra, but the wallets are too big. They cannot follow up on the fight. They tried so hard, but the Aatrox coming in on the flank, and I mean, Echo tried to do something, it really didn't work. Got caught up by the Nautilus hook and burst down. Even the ultimate's still up, they couldn't react to it. And that's just going to be the game for Arrogant Owls. We're going to game 3, and I don't know if I even thought I would have to say this, but we're going to have to see if TFC can manage to pull it together for game 3.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they can bounce back for Game 3. As looking at this series, TFC, they look fantastic in Game 1. We see the Owls answer back in Game 2, subverting all our expectations. And the only trend I can see is you and I predicting the wrong teams.
Yeah, so maybe that's the key. Maybe we just have to predict the opposite of what we think is going to happen, and it'll happen. Of course, that's going to be the classic caster curse. I'm sure a lot of people have probably heard about it, but luckily we have been blessed with it this series.
That we have, as we're going to be bringing Slayer back into the booth to break down what we just saw.
What we just saw, J Turbo, was everything that I said that you should be able to correct from one game to another is completely thrown out the window. I mean, we talked about the fact that, yes, both these sides had some stronger picks in the meta with some more off meta picks, I would say. But when it comes to 12.19, it feels like the Syndra is still very, very strong. The Kayn, as you guys mentioned with the Darken form, very, very good pick as well. And man, I don't know what else to say, Graham, besides the fact that all those macro miscues that we maybe saw in Game 1 seem to have been cleaned up in a jiffy.
Oh, absolutely. The Owls played so much better than that game too, and they were able to recognize so many different breakpoints, and they were able to utilize a lot of the leads that they had. The Kayn got ahead early, and they were able to use that to sort of go around the map and say, cool, we're going to do our job. You're going to try to answer on the other side, but at the end of the day, if we just play safe and we understand what to give and what not to give, you're not going to be able to get much, and we're just going to come out with essentially a free objective. And that happened at the Rift Herald fight. They got 2 dragons early on, just like in the previous game, but this time they're able to continue growing that gold lead instead of saying, okay, yeah, we got 2k gold ahead, but now that's the end of it. We didn't reach a higher ceiling, but as it grew 3k, 4k, 5k, it just ballooned out of proportion until they tried to fight. TFC tried to find an angle, but they played so solidly in the early to mid game, and they're able to transition that nicely. And I want to see that get out of them again, because this is their playoffs hope on the line, and it all comes down to this Game 3.
Exactly. You alluded to my next point there beautifully, Graham, is we talked about this before we got into this game, the idea of the pressure building. J Turbo, you described it as a weight on the shoulders of this team of Arrogant Owls that, hey, if we drop this game, there's virtually zero shot that we play in the playoffs for Premade Dominant. And they certainly proved, well, not only the doubters, but all 3 of us on the analyst desk wrong.
Yeah, they proved us wrong completely. And I'm just really happy to see that the Owls, a team that we saw earlier on in the season, were able to bounce back from losing a few of these matches, from going 1-2 in some of these series, and now to bring it back against one of, if not the strongest team, and dominate and show that you can punch up, you can face off against the big dogs, is really a statement. And if the Owls win this one, I see them just going on a tear for the rest of the season, really fighting for that playoff spot.
It's certainly really intriguing to talk about. If they win this potential game, I want to quickly take a look. I believe, yeah, if they win this game, the Owls, they've actually, it seems like they've already. That's interesting. It says on the schedule they've already actually played their Week 7 matchup, but I think that might just be a typo. It looks like they would go up against. Oh, okay. This is intriguing. So the opponent that they were going to play, Week 7 is the opponent that actually pulled out late of the split. So I don't know what that actually does for their record, but it certainly means that, Graham, we're in for one heck of a Game 3.
Absolutely. I think if I were to read this correctly, of course, they might have to change, but that does mean that instead of 2-3, the record actually would change to 3-3 instead, and that means that this quite literally could be the last game they play in Risen.
Yeah, absolutely crazy to think about that they could potentially be the difference between 4-3 and 3-4. And to be honest with all the Risen faithful, 4-3 is playoffs and 3-4 is not playoffs, based off of how their group has shook up so far. Well, we're getting set for that pivotal Game 3 draft, so before that happens, we'll take one more quick break, and on the other side, J Turbo and Graham will take you through what has got to be the most pivotal draft of this weekend of Risen.
To the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang.
up.
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it.
Wow!
And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him, and they call comes back in the circuit, but finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out, simply tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the lead, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
Normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo Boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Soulpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good depth running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series, it seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo Boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang, Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 350 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal up. And they call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange applies is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage to Treble back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the ace, and they look to take the game.
And then as we roll...
And welcome back. We've got the Game 3 decider between TFC and the Arrogant Owls as we're jumping straight into draft. We've got the Ornn and Caitlyn taken off the table by Team Fried Chicken and the Seraphine Graves for the Arrogant Owls.
Yeah, this has been the same bans for the entire series. So Aatrox being taken off the ban this time is actually a new one. We'll see if Arrogant Owls will leave open the Maokai yet again, or if it's banned like TFC did in the previous game, but certainly did help in TFC's win. So I would be surprised if they don't take it away, and it will probably just be a first pick Maokai now that the Hecarim is gone, and of course TFC will gladly snatch that up.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would have Maokai ban over a Hecarim ban. There's a quite to deal with the Hecarim in my opinion and the Maokai, because this Maokai just becomes an omnipresent threat. He just exists and is like, I'm gonna throw down the roots, I'm gonna root you up, and I'm gonna make this so tough to manage, as we are gonna see that locked in. Now for the Owls, now the Aatrox is off the table, we gotta see what they dip into for their top lane pool.
Exactly, and the other thing that I do want to touch on is that since we saw Sivir Yuumi last game, it is on the table for them to pick. However, it didn't look too promising, and that's going to be a very interesting one to track throughout this draft. Is do they go for the Sivir Yuumi in this next round here? But Azir will be the hover. It is a very good mid laner and probably the priority pick for a lot of mid laners, especially at Worlds. But we'll be locked in, and that means that we'll have extra scaling on the side of Arrogant Owl. The Kai'Sa that they initially wanted to do.
Yeah, we are seeing that Azir Kai'Sa bringing that scaling, and also the comfort that we saw, big part of the Owls' success last time. Wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two Engage Sports picked away, but some option taken off the table by TFC is they've got a few options available. Are just going to go for that Victor handshake in the mid lane, control v control, as now looking to round things off. Outside of the Maokai, they've already got plenty of scaling, so might look for some early game agency in the jungle.
Yeah, Victor versus Azir is a matchup as old as Azir. Actually, Victor is technically older, but this was pretty much the most common matchup for I think 2 years, season 5, season 6. But the Amumu hover is pretty interesting. Just blind will not really pair it with any ADC that they want. Misfortune will probably be taken away from them in the second round of bans, but taken away from the Kai'Sa, saying, okay, sure, you don't want to have this with the Kai'Sa, it's too strong of a pairing, but we just saw the Nautilus come out in the previous game, and they'll gladly take that anyway and say, okay, cool, you took the Amumu, but I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I was honestly expecting TFC to maybe look towards that Nautilus instead, give themselves some playmaking potential, potentially paired alongside something like a Tristana or one of those other power picks. And as you predicted, the Owl's going to take that Misfortune off the table. Do not want to allow for that Curse of the Sad Bullet Time combo that has been so present as of late.
Yeah, actually, they swapped it over to Urgot, so
okay.
Appreciate the praise.
I still hope it's a Misfortune second.
Yeah, I'll take the prediction anyway. That's a point for me. But they swapped over to the Urgot. A little bit intriguing there, since they don't have a top Dima. It does mean that they do want something that is a little bit vulnerable to getting poked out. So we'll have to see what they want. I'm not too versed on my Urgot matchups. It's one of those champions where it's not too common really any meta, but certainly if you play the Urgot, you play the champion, then it is in your wheelhouse. So we'll have to see what they were trying to get through, if they'll just ban the Misfortune or if they'll give us more insight into what they're thinking for their R4 pick here.
Potentially, I will say that Kane taken off the table, taken away from Zen, getting rid of that
Mhm.
comfort. We saw it really come out to fruition, be one of those significant parts of that winning composition, and the Misfortune will get removed. Now you get double the points because you predicted to be banned twice, and it was hovered twice.
Yeah, that's not double dipping. I think that's legal. Uh, but the Jarvan will be taken away, so we will see a brand new jungler being picked for Arrogant Owls here, as both of them were previously banned, and the Trundle Hover is actually going to be probably my favorite one. There's two very juicy targets for the ultimate and for the subjugate, so it will be locked in, as of course I think that makes the most sense. Make sure that the Maokai or the Amumu, who you really care about the most, is not going to be that extremely tanky threat that will just run through your entire team. Have to kind of cool them down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Going to cool them down. I believe this Trundle was banned in previous games, so now that champion pool really getting pinched out, realizing that you can't
Ooh.
have that Jarvan, can't have that Kane. As something else that has still slipped through the bans is that Sivir Yumi. Remember, Amumu can still be a jungler, even though he's primarily been in a role. Surprise
Will
if he
be
end up in the bot lane, but still there's
okay.
options. Is hovered, likely to be locked in, as we did see a Maokai jungle earlier, and it definitely fits the style for TFC as they put together some scaling, and they've put together a lot of team fight.
I was holding my breath there because I actually thought it would have been a very smart flex to take the Amumu jungle. Amumu, of course, is not necessarily the best jungler, but if you can get it with the Sivir Yumi instead, it would have been great. But just take the Gnar instead. It's blind top lane, and we're gonna pick whatever. A lot of fun hovers coming through, but don't think any of those will be locked in. I said the Yasuo, and actually think that is a pretty solid answer into Gnar, but we'll have to see what their preferred flavor of choice is into this Gnar, as it's not gonna be Teemo, right? Okay.
Okay, it's going to be Sejuani. That makes a lot more sense. I like that Sejuani matchup in the top side. I think it still lends itself quite well to their top side of the map for AOW. For
Mhm.
Owl, for the Owls. Oh my goodness, I can't even speak. But won't have to do that for too much longer. We're gonna bring Slayer back into the booth. And he can speak for me.
Yeah, trust me. I made the switch up J Turbo. I called them AWOL, AWOL, because I thought it was that as their acronym. A Owl. Rocking with a very intriguing comp. I mean, they're obviously going back to some of the tried and true things. I know last draft I touched on the fact that Kai'Sa Nihilus, they pair really well together. We saw those two flourish pretty well, not only in lane but in later fights. And Azir, if you've been watching Worlds, like probably everyone has, and I know everyone at home's probably heard about 1,200 references to Worlds by this point across whatever leagues you've been watching. But I feel like Azir was the statement pick of the entirety of group stage up until about this point of being banned or picked in a lot of facets. So certainly be interesting to see how the Azir matches up against the Victor, which you also heard Graham touch on has been a tried and true matchup since both the champions really have existed on Summoner's Rift. But Graham, I'm gonna go to you for a different bit of a matchup here. Gnar Sejuani, what were we rating it? Are we going all the way at snooze fest or action packed?
You see, that's the thing, and I don't want it to be snooze fest, but it absolutely can be, because at the end of the day, it really is just tank versus tank. We're just slapping on two fun champions at the end, and you can play it, and I think Sejuani will be happy to take the scaling. I think Gnar will be happy to take the scaling. I do think that Sejuani can be pretty aggressive in this matchup, though, especially if you go for the Ignite TP option, which is something that we have seen quite a bit for Sejuani top laners. But the interesting thing that is, we're assuming it is Sejuani top. Do want to play devil's advocate? I do think it's Sejuani top, by the way, before I get into this tangent. It can be Trundle top lane, though, and that is a different take to it, where Trundle will absolutely be fun, because you can use Pillar to cancel Gnar hop, and that will be absolutely detrimental in the matchup. It is very, very hard to do, and it is very skill based, and that's why I don't think it's Trundle top lane, but it is a possibility. But back to actual Gnar versus Sejuani, I think it probably will just be a bit of a snoozer, and Arrogant Owls will be looking to take a very steady, slow game and say, we have a Zir, make sure that we are going to get to the late games.
Exactly. They're looking to get to the late game scaling now. What are the answers here, right? Because momentum always plays a factor, and we've seen some draft adjustments. The big one coming out here is the Team Fried Chicken. They're still rocking the Sivir, but they're opting for a little more engage with the Amumu now. J Turbo, I'm curious on your take on that because it definitely seemed last game like, as OP as Sivir Yumi is, Sivir was just too susceptible to being jumped on by the likes of the Nautilus along with, that Aatrox that was so strong. How are you feeling about switching from Yumi to Amumu with the Sivir for game 3?
I think that we're not going to see, that spacewalk and Sivir that you might associate with that Yumi pairing, where you get that bonus move speed. You can just run all over the Rift. But what this does do is it provides Team Fried Chicken with more options for engage. It gives them a little bit more agency. It lets them set the pace of some of these fights, because that was the problem for so many of the previous fights. It was that this Sivir was just dove onto, and because the Sejuani was their only engage, and often they had to use that Frozen Bola defensively if they weren't trying to find a pick. But now with the Amumu, now with the Gnar, now with the Maokai, there's going to be less threats getting to this Sivir because they're just going to be going forward. I think this is very much a spot where to protect your Sivir, you just need to make sure the other team is locked up.
Well, there you go. Yeah, if you can't heal and shield your AD carry to protect them, well, just lock up everybody else that can jump on top of Sivir. I like that strategy. We'll have to see if it pays off for Team Fried Chicken. And Graham, you know what time it is. I know you two have been, 0-2 in predictions now. I'm going to let you big brain it if you want to, but are you backing the adjustments made by Team Fried Chicken, or do you think the momentum squad of Arrogant Owls is going to punch their potential ticket to playoffs?
It's hard for me to say, because one of the barometers that I sort of use for a lot of team comps, especially when we're at this level where it's not the top of the top, we're not casting worlds right now, obviously, so is how easy it is to actually execute your game plans. And in this case, I would say that both of these are fairly easy to execute. Very clear what they want to do. They have very age tools, and they have very obvious backline threats. So it's very hard for me to actually decide this based on that alone, and I'm going to give it strictly to Arrogant Owls just because I want to see it. I want to see this sort of come to fruition and want to see them go to playoffs. But more so, I feel like off of that extremely one-sided win, they're going to have a lot of momentum coming into this, and they're going to have sort of the mental of saying, okay, we just played Kai'Sa Nautilus into a Sivir lane. We just played this sort of, okay, we have Kayn, we're going to farm up and we're going to let that happen. We just played a sort of weak side top lane, and I do want to see them sort of use that and say, we just played something that is very similar to this. We can play this out again.
Well, it'll certainly be very intriguing to watch how they play off. Like you mentioned, a pretty similar comp. Now, J Turbo, you're up to bat now, but I do want to preface this. I know you've touched on both drafts prior, the idea of counter picking and playing those counter picks well for Team Fried Chicken. Game 1 certainly lived up to that expectation. You said game 2, maybe not as much. How much is that impacting your pick, and what is your pick for this pivotal game 3?
All right, so there wasn't a ton of counter picking that we saw in this draft. We saw the Maokai and the Victor prioritized early. The Victor into the Azir, I don't necessarily consider that a hard counter or anything like that. It does just feel like a handshake lane where they're admitting we don't need to play for agency, and that's also what they've done throughout this series. They've sat back, they've taken the back foot, and to that effect, I think this draft really lends itself to that for TFC. And I think that they're going to take away the win. I think they have so many team fighting options, and they have so many ways to set the tempo for this game as it goes late. And even if they fall behind, there's nothing that you can do into a Mumu ulti, into the Gnar, into the Maokai route, into a Chaos Storm. I think that is just too much layering. And I'm confirming that either Graham or myself are going to be correct and cannot just curse out the team that we both vote for. So TFC all the way, keep it undefeated.
That's beautiful, because I was going to pick, if you two tied again, I was going to test if I was the curse from game 2 or was you two again and pick against you. So you've saved my behind on this one already, J Turbo. I'm going to rock with the Arrogant Owls purely because I have watched too many Azir Kai'Sa pairings win too many games of League of Legends over the past couple weeks. So I'm going to punch a hopeful ticket to the playoffs for Arrogant Owls. But for one last time to see who is going to take down this very pivotal Week 6 Premade dominant showcase matchup between Arrogant Owls and Team Fried Chicken, we're going to take one quick break and go back to Summoner's Rift with J Turbo and Graham.
To the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang,
up!
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Big
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3v3 on the other side, but I can't clutch to it, and I can't clutch to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him, and they call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one, can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out, simply tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the lead, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
Normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo Boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Soulpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good depth running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series, it seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo Boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen Recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang, Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened.
And welcome back to the conclusion of the Arrogant Owls up against Team Fried Chicken, as this has been quite the underdog story when we look at game 1 and to where we are now at game 3.
You're absolutely right there, and it looks like we'll have a little bit of fun in the TFC, looking to try and go for some type of invade. Of course, the Amumu Q level 1 is absolutely impressive, and looking to try and exercise that on the Kaisa, but they will be walking in very shortly, looks like. Or not.
I think this was potentially an attempt to just catch someone out who wanted to walk forward, and instead, that's not going to happen. Both teams just going to play, or not both teams, but Team Fried Chicken looking to try and play against the invade style we saw out of the Arrogant Owls before, and instead the Owls go for a 5-point And the style sort of mixed up as the early game, but no one going down early, no disadvantages. And we're going to see we're going to see Zen starting on this top side with the Trundle and that Sejuani in the top side. We mentioned that was a potential flex, but I am glad to see that this Trundle is going to be in the jungle and the Sedge in the top side.
Yeah, I am too. Would have been fun to see Trundle top, but I don't think it would be good. So, do respect that. It is actually Flash Sejuani instead of the Ignite teleport that I did previously mention. I didn't think it was necessarily likely because we have, or at least I have noticed that there's been a shift away from the Ignite TP Sejuani meta where you instead run Flash because it's just more safety, more potential for engaging. So either or, I think both are completely reasonable, but we will see the Flash variation of this, and that does mean that less kill pressure in lane does mean you'll have more playmaking later on.
Playing for that later game, and also means we're going to get a bit of a snoozer lane as Random Capitals putting a lot of chunk onto the bod kill as finally able to get a bit of an advantage early on. We saw last game the Echo taking a lot of favorable trades. In the first game, of course, that Heimerdinger showing out to some pretty fantastic success. And now looking at this game, we've seen both times early gold leads for the side of the Arrogant Owls, and it's going to start once again. 80 on this Kai'Sa picking up a quick kill on the level 1 Sivir.
And that was just absolutely brutal there. The hook connecting onto the Sivir there. And the level 2 coming out, the W adding so much damage onto the Kai'Sa's DPS overall, and securing that quick kill, making sure this wave actually crashes in. And this Sivir is going to be so far behind now because now the Kai'Sa can just back, take the reset, and pick up a pickaxe as well as whatever components they so desire.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of early gold and a lot of pressure onto this bot lane that really wants to succeed as we're going to see the junglers run into each other. Trundle, of course, with the advantage, pops the pillar. Does want to try and take away this flash from Jackie Chan as the top laners are in their own battle. Lethal Tempo popped, and good patience on the Maokai not to flash away, but that will mean for Scuttle heading over to this Trundle.
Yeah, the buff Q knockback there really paying off a lot. This can just say, okay, cool. Don't wanna play with you right now, so I'll just knock you away and be on my way. The important thing to note, though, that is a phase rush Maokai, and this is something that I have sort of thought about a lot because you have seen it at Worlds quite a bit, whether it be top, whether it be jungle. And the theory behind it is that oftentimes when you're playing Aftershock Maokai, when you're using when you're using his ultimate, you actually will proc your Aftershock and not get the full value out of it, and instead you want to get that phase rush because it allows you to reposition and effectively give you more defensiveness by dodging abilities. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I still think a very good rune for Maokai to take, but this is another option that we have seen quite often.
Yeah, it is another option, and I personally really like the phase rush usage. I think that it just lends itself to more skirmishing potential, and also, as you mentioned, the ability to dodge away from things like the Sand Soldiers that are really going to be burning you down, or the Frozen Bola that might come down from Verdale. So that's great to see, as also some posturing from Jackie Chan, looking for a gank onto this mid lane. Does try and get the root, can't see it quite yet. Will be able to escape without using Flash, just barely. But still, we've seen a lot of patience out of these Flash usages, and it's worked out for all those who've been holding on.
Good recognition there from Random Capital saying, shouldn't really have to burn my Flash there. They don't have quite enough damage, and of course, that's exactly what happened. And they'll just be able to teleport back, get double Amp Tome, has the Corrupting Potion in inventory, and now they just kind of have to play a little bit far back because, of course, the Amumu did show up. They did come back down bot lane, but Maokai could still be in the area. They will push up now that it's sufficient time has passed, and now it's going to be a bit problematic for the bod kill, who has to take a pretty unfortunate back here to even match the Azir's push potential, and they're going to be sitting in this lane with just a Doran's Ring versus Corrupting plus double Amp Tome.
Yeah, probably just trying to get as much XP as possible, but that bonus poke from the Azir, that extra damage, is going to force him off. We'll say bod kill been farming up quite nicely, despite all of the pressure that's been put down by this Azir. About 10 CS up, and does have the teleport, so won't miss too much XP. This crash won't go the way that Capitals wanted, but still early gold lead, primarily in that bot side for the Arrogant Owls. And now Zen, looking for a gank, is at a pretty significant level disadvantage relative to the bod kill, and this safe position should mean it's just going to be another hover.
But the shuffle is available, especially with the pillar up. It can mean that you're at least burning a flash for ultimate trade, which I think they'll take. Doesn't look like they'll be able to get the angle, though, playing a bit too safe in the mid lane there, as we'll push in, and Zen will now recognize it. Just as it actually could have been an angle, actually.
Yeah, a lot of time used, but this is just going to mean a dragon transition off the bot lane. That was likely what Zen was waiting for. Just sit mid until bot pushes in, and then they can start stacking these drakes. As I do like how Arrogant Owls have been using their early pressure into these drakes and have been getting better every single game. We saw those dragon timers just pick up, and last game, that soul timer really forcing a lot of awkward positions for TFC, forcing them to fight, forcing them to take engages that they really shouldn't have wanted to go for. We do see more members for TFC sitting around this mid lane, trying to hover the bot kill, but again, safety out of Random Capitals, recognizing the lack of an Amumu in the bot lane.
Yep, a little bit of a roam there, so from both supports actually, as the Nautilus is sitting in the bush, but as both mid laners are going to be chunked to about half their health bar, does mean that it is a bit of a precarious situation. Amumu just came back, so this is actually pretty dangerous. As Shuffle going in.
Shuffle going in, right into the waiting jaws of Zen, and he's going to take a bite out of that Victor, as flash used by Jordale will be able to slow this fight down, and actually might just try and take the kill for himself. Nearly able to do it, but can't quite get it. And that is going to be a trade of ultis and a flash burned by the Sejuani.
Okay. Thought something might happen, but yeah, it was a trade of ultis and then the flash for the Sejuani. So overall, I think Argur will be happy with that trade. I think if you didn't panic flash there and instead you flashed to the side of the Gnar W instead of just straight backwards, you could have actually just killed him with an extra auto or two on the charge, but I get it. I was worried that you were taking tower aggro as it was a bit of a precarious position, so like no harm, no foul there, but a dive is going to come in, and it might be a bit problematic. Hop should be available with flash.
Hop should be available, but you just can't avoid the auto chomp. Zen showing up in game 2 as we saw in game 1, and it feels when Zen is enabled and Zen is showing up, so does the rest of the Owls.
Yeah, it feels like he's been an absolute key member for this set, at least. Of course, it might be a different story for a lot of their other sets, but Zen has been playing really well this set and has been a pretty big linchpin for the way that Arrogant Owls want to play. If Zen is ahead, then they can actually utilize a lot of that pressure to get somewhere else on the map and express their own leads elsewhere. So really well done from him so far, and hopefully it will lead into a successful game 3 for them. If not, Trundle does fall off quite substantially. It's not a champion that will continue to get better as the game goes on. It kind of sort of stalls and stagnates at around the mid game after. So we'll have to see how they play around there, but Maokai will be picked up on the pink ward in mid.
Yeah, and one thing I will say that while yes, Trundle can't just sort of run up to ADCs or carries once that mid game happens, it does get decently squishy, especially going for this Divine Sunder build, does always have that subjugate, and that will mean he's always relevant for these later fights. It means that no matter how tanky this tree gets, that subjugate can always chop it down.
Exactly, and it is important to note that there are 2 front lines, so therefore only one subjugate target can be hit, and therefore there will still be 1 full tank at full power for the side of TFC, but if you ult the Maokai, it is safe to assume that that's going to be tankier, as Amumu is the support. It won't be getting as much gold influxed into those tank stats, and therefore probably will get more stats off the Maokai, so some things to consider as we go into later on team fights. But for now, the game is a little bit stagnant, of course, a lot of things. As I say that, though,
yeah, stagnant, but not for Jordale. Does get a fantastic bola down onto Argur, dodges the stun, and the Hop Gnar should be enough damage, as that's going to be the run down. A little bit more chunkin', but that's nowhere near enough. Good kill pickup by the top lane duo.
very good kill indeed. It is important to note that that is going to be a lot burned for that kill, though. That was going to be Gnar Flash, Maokai Flash, and both ultimates burned, albeit those ultimates are very low cooldown, so probably won't matter too much in the long run, but those flashes are going to be very key, especially when we consider the fact that those two are probably going to be what Zen is going to target.
Exactly. Is going to be those targets. Now in the bot lane, Zen just wants to keep weakening this Sivir. Is just diving, is just running down, forces both sums out, and will walk away scot-free. And that's the power of this Trundle if he gets ahead.
Yeah, walk softly but carry a big stick is how Trundle plays the game. And that big stick hurts, especially if you're the Sivir. So Well, oh, very close, but Riftbell being dropped bot lane does mean that at least 3 plates will be going over, because I'm assuming they're grabbing that first one. And that is quite a bit of gold, but you can see on the minimap, 2 members from TFC are actually rotating down, and that's going to be it. They get the charge, they're running away immediately. Very good recognition of seeing that there could be 4 members collapsing in.
Yeah, they're walking out, although this Infernal Drake is going to be spawning soon, so Zen going to pick up that Divine Sunderer. Might get stopped by the Sapling, doesn't get spotted quite quickly enough as the Sapling did log on, but just walks to its death as the back was completed. Although early pressure for this Drake, certainly for Team Fried Chicken, as they might just want to try and burn this before the Trundle can get there.
Ooh, very, very close. They saw the Azir rotating. They tried to take a blind hook into the bush. That certainly would have been a kill, but didn't predict that Random Capitals would be moving that far up. Important to note, though, that if they do want to fight here, Jordan does have the teleport. It isn't 14 minutes, though. Twisting Advance drop down.
Twisting Advance dropped as they just want to take this fight. They want to use that engage, but Prince pretty tanky on this Nautilus. Curse the Sad Mummy used onto AD, quickly cleansed away as Jincell running into the Emperor's Divide as it splits Team Fried Chicken in half. Organized running for his life, but the dive down from AD gonna be enough. Capitals looking for more, can't quite find the Maokai, but still one fight for the Owls as they're saying, who are you, TFC, as they want to keep their tournament hopes alive.
Yeah, that's going to be a 2-for-1 and getting the dragon there. TFC tried to pull the trigger. They tried to get something done. They had the rotate. They had the Twisting Advance drop down, but at the end of the day, all they caught was the Nautilus. And that's not the one you want to get, because after the Nautilus, the depth charge, the Nautilus doesn't do much anyway. So dropping the depth charge, getting the shield out, and getting everything that he could, maximizing his life there, and then, of course, Random Capitals on the side being able to scoop up the bot lane of TFC, leading to a very nice little team fight there for Arrogant Owls.
Yeah, fantastic fight. 4 members for both squads around. And one thing I want to note is also all of the gold that Arrogant Owls have is where they want it. They have this Trundle who's stepping up early. They have this Kaisa now 3-0. And even though Random Capitals on this Azir doesn't have any kills, still has 3 assists. And that's another nice chunk of change that's coming in and helping him stay at least even with the bot kill, as the bot kill's picked up a bit of a farm advantage.
Yeah, the farm lead will be actually quite significant. That's about a kill's worth of golden farm. For those of you who... Oh, my favorite. 15 to 20 CS is equal to about 1 kill. So keep that in mind as you're sort of calculating advantages there. But that is about 1 kill's worth of gold ahead in CS at least. Of course, the assists kind of even things out a little bit, but you can kind of see the difference between the full completed Leandries, the Victor, and the components for the Azir there. So a little bit of quick math and fun facts. I think I'm the only one who finds that fun, but you know.
Gram of knowledge.
Yeah, gram of knowledge, exactly. That was a fun thing. But looking back into this game, though.
For everyone who doesn't know, Gram had a series where it was daily gram of knowledge, and basically it was posting like a league fact or an league esports fact once a day. And it was one of my favorite series to see on Twitter when I'd peep in. But now it seems like Jordale wants to make a series of his own, and that series is taken down the top lane of Team Fried Chicken. Although Zen hasn't popped Subjugate yet, that Twisting Advance will be enough to disengage the fight, and not too much goes down. Organized, though, dives a little too deep as the Blast Plant will not allow Prince to hop into the fight, and it will be just stepped away as Jordale wants to continue this. He's up against a Triforce Gnar. Very, very squishy flash forward, grabs the kill, and that's just going to be effectively a solo kill because Zen did very, very little damage across the board.
And that's the Battle Pig right there. Coming in, swooping, and taking that kill. Sejuani does a surprising amount of damage, but engage on the bot side, though.
Engage on the bot side, and this Amumu is very squishy. That Curse the Sad Mummy doesn't do nearly enough, as you gotta remember, when you're on this Amumu, you're building support, you're just an ulti bot, and if you get caught out, it's gonna end like that.
Very, very close on that second hook, but as you mentioned, yeah, Azir's... Oh, very good flash.
Rima Shuffle out of Capitals, wanting to find that scoop, as the bot kill will just walk up and get the Death Laser in response. Fantastic flash, fantastic reaction, but a pillar in response. Jackie Chan is here. Subjugate not used, and now getting caught behind his own pillar. Gets stunned by the gravity well, and that's going to be knocked back into the Victor as a couple fights go in the way of TFC in this top side, and we'll be able to secure that Herald.
That's actually a very huge pick that they found. Of course, the 1v1 onto Random Capitals. Good flash on the recognition of the pullback from the Shurima there. Ended up just turning and killing off the Azir, but Zen going a bit too far. Thought he could get the pillar knocked back into him, but it was instead an awkward angle that moved him to the side, and that's not going to kill there. Going in and giving away a shutdown to the Maokai. Doesn't necessarily mean that the victor will be accelerated any further. Of course, still got the assist, but doesn't mean that Maokai will be tankier than normal.
That's never something you want to see. As Argru on this Nar's been struggling so much, and now with Prince trying to offer some extra CC, will just walk that one out after reaching that Mega. As AD unable to snipe with but still advantage towards the Owls, still keeping this lead about 2k. What we saw in game 1, and now it's going to be a matter of their transition. They've got 2 Drakes already. This Mountain as well, going to be the soul for this game. Should be pretty significant as Random Capitals realizes he's behind, shuffles into the Azir Tower as the bod kill. Going to be taking a couple shots, but the Chaos Storm a little too strong as the bod kill finding outplays left and right.
Yeah, the shuffle back into the tower was great, but the setup timer on it is too slow. There was no damage actually being done by it, and of course by the time that it was up and running, it was going to be hitting the minions for things, so a little bit too confident there from Random Cap. It will be another solo bod kill there, going 2-1 on the victor and winning this matchup quite substantially, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, definitely winning very substantially as Prince, no wards in hand, so did want to back for that, but with this Drake spawning in just 10 seconds, that timer really isn't present. Have to remember, Capitals does have the TP, opts for the mid tower, and indeed, Drodali as well coming in. This is going to be a good old-fashioned 5v5. Dragon, started by Argru, is close to Mega. That's the timer to watch, as both teams looking for the engage. There's the hook on an Organize, quick stun, but it's going to be a counter. Curse of the Sad Mummy, no one gone down quite yet. Jackie Chan getting subjugated down, but still not enough damage as that opening chunk works out for Team Fried Chicken. Drodali hops back in. The Sejuani, that bear pig, going to be huge for the Gnar, even bigger. The Jincell finds many, and that's going to be a double as the rest of the Owls are running for their lives. It's going to be a triple for the Sivir as any early game advantage has been wiped off the map.
And just like that, TFC are going to secure their... a little bit of reset on the Dragon there, but just like that, TFC are going to secure their game back in the hands of their own fate. And only a 1k gold deficit for them at this point. It was such an intriguing fight to watch because there was the initial engage at the Maokai ultimate movement. Everyone kind of just split and parted ways and said, okay, cool, we're done. We can't really engage anymore. We have dropped down a lot of our engage. We dropped disengage. We can't do anymore. But then they stayed around. They tried to re-engage it. Without the tools there, there's no real way to actually do anything. And of course, the side with the victor, with the side of the Sivir, is actually going to come out in the end. And of course, the massive Gnar ultimate from Argru coming in and cleaning up a lot of the loose members.
That Gnar ulti was huge. Argru, despite falling in the lane phase, brought it all back with that one moment. And now, the Herald in hand, a huge swing in tempo, as Team Fried Chicken going to be a lot more comfortable with this game state.
Absolutely. Herald's going to charge down, take the first mid tower, but of course, Sejuani ultimate dropping on the eye. Nothing will result from it.
Nothing at all, as no one can even step up to deny this push. It's going to be 2 charges off of that Herald. And now, Gold's dead. Even map in the advantage of TFC, as they're going to take that top turret as well and finally get their first gold lead of the game.
First time this game, they'll actually have a gold lead. And I think probably for the first time in the last 2 games, actually, they'll have a gold lead. So turning this around, making sure that they can actually stay in the set and clean it up. That being said, though, it isn't that significant of a gold lead. I think about 350 is what I'd rate it at. So it is pretty much nothing. And it's pretty much nothing in the grand scheme of things. That means that they kind of just equalized it. But I think with the composition that they have, with the fact that they can go late game pretty safely, they're going to be more than happy with it. That being said, though, of course, Arrogant Owls can go late game as well. It's not the end of the world for them, but with the Victor and Sivir being available, I think I would favor their odds a lot more.
Yeah, I completely agree. Azir scales fantastically. Kaisa has a fantastic late game of her own, but again, this Trundle might fall off a little bit more than you'd want him to, and Gnar, Maokai will only get beefier. this Victor is going to be huge and is actually building towards that Deathcap's second item. Just wants to get some new fashion into his wardrobe and really decimate the Rift with it.
Yeah, Deathcap second is actually a bit of an interesting one. Normally you see some type of magic pen item come through first before you get that extra chunk of ability power, but decided that, hey, I'm ahead, I'm fed, let's just get the hat and let's make sure that I can do damage and pretty much one-shot either the Azir or the Kai'Sa depending on his mood.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that there was one needlessly in his inventory. I'm like, oh, okay, that's going to go for Shadow Flame, pretty standard. And then after that fight, it's like, okay, it's Deathcap time.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of a switch flipped. I know how to speak English, but
Don't worry, you're not an English major.
yeah, no, exactly. I only speak the language, so you know, it's not like I should be able to speak it or anything.
Exactly. I mean, you got your doctorate in phonology. You're currently getting ready for med school, so there's been a lot of non-English focused parts of your academic career. As now Zen's gonna have his jungling career potentially stopped short, as the Gnar will drag him back despite all the healing, despite all of the sustain, won't be nearly enough.
Yeah, career cut short there from Zen, getting caught out, trying to get on the blue buff with Gardale, but of course being on the top side that does have implications for Baron, but just a massive chunk out there, and of course don't mind burning the Kainoff Storm full poke. Of course, it's going to be half health bar onto random capitals, and doesn't look like TFC is willing to pull the trigger and say we just killed their jungler top side, let's go for Baron. You want to take it a bit more slow, a bit more measured, and I think that's completely fine. I would have liked them to see to start Baron. I think it would have been pretty successful, especially given the amount of turn that they have, but did burn the Sivir ulti, so it does make a little bit of sense that maybe they don't want to go for something that crazy.
Yeah, no Sivir ult, no Gnar, so that means that the only ulti they really had at their disposal would have been that Twisting Advance, so does make the fight a little bit riskier, and also Random Capitals does have the teleport, so would be able to respond. And even though it'd be a 4v5, Azir soldiers just picking at you while you're trying to take Baron is never something you want to run into.
Absolutely, and Shadow Flame will be built towards on this Azir, making that hopefully we'll be able to shred through a lot of the tanks. Sort of accelerated on the side of TFC, but with the Mountain Dragon spawning up, doesn't mean that they'll actually look for something, but Arrogant Owls are actually just going to say, we'll do Baron, you can take the dragon. This is extremely risky as they haven't even started the dragon yet.
They haven't started the dragon, but still the rotates are a little slow. And it does look like TFC are trying to clear out this vision, but this Baron is burning so quickly. They just need to stall for a couple more moments, and that's going to be the Baron going over. The bot kill very low, denied out of this fight for just a moment, but still that Chaos Storm damage is paying off in dividends. Zen trying to stay alive, can't do anything about that huge Sivir in the Emperor's Divide, creates an artificial wall. So fight lost, but Baron won by the Owls.
They'll take the Baron. It will be 3 members that are able to wear the purple worm, but unfortunately does mean that they do win the fight for TFC, and the bot kill getting caught out walked too far at the beginning, but couldn't get the amount of damage needed and was able to walk away pretty much unharmed, drop the Chaos Storm, and that was going to be wreaking havoc throughout the entirety of Arrogant Owls. And of course, the movement down to this second dragon for the side of TFC does mean that even though they have the Baron on the side of Arrogant Owls, TFC is still in a really good position.
Yeah, they're still in a great position. They're stacking up these mountains. And I will say props to the Owls for taking those early two. Put Soul a little bit further on the horizon, but those stacking stats never going to be fun to deal with. As one thing I do want to note, the members on the side of the Arrogant Owls who did get the Baron buff were able to escape with their lives are realistically the ones you want to have it the most. It was the Sejuani, the Azir, and the Kai'Sa, so you can still have that 1-3-1 setup present, even without Zen and Prince getting that bonus buff.
Absolutely. So they do have the buff on the key members of Arrogant Owls, but the problem that I'm encountering is that they don't have real ways to utilize it. They can't overextend because there's so much pick potential on the side of TFC, and so trying to push with the Baron becomes extremely difficult unless they were to 5-man up mid lane and try to finally break down the mid lane tower.
Exactly. They could just try and ARAM it out, get that mid tower, open things up, as that's really what has held this team so far back, as they've got their damage here. And the response, just having the tank, having that Sivir wave clear, as we saw last game, as we continue to see, is this pick is always relevant, really, for that wave clear potential, for the ability to just stall the game, slow it down, and reach that late game spot that you really want to have.
Absolutely. The Azir turret being placed down sort of makes it easier for them to retreat. What's going on to the Amumu, though?
But going in is they want to fight, and that seems like it'll be it. Frozen Bola in response does go on to the Malk. Kai Shurima shuffling back into the team, but that's not what you want. Random Capitals does get brought back as well, but the shutdown onto the big tank, what you need. Organize going down as well. Jordale trying to keep this one going, but the bouncing blades are doing too much damage from the Sivir. Gonna find one, gonna dash forward. Zen all alone just gets eliminated by the bod kill as that fight was looking all right, but gets completely turned around.
Yeah, very good engage. It looked a little bit worrying as Random Capitals went in very aggressively for the Azir shuffle. Ended up flashing backwards, stayed safe for a little bit, but the Sivir cleanup is just so potent. Looks like Prince will go down, got caught on the unsafe recall as this will probably be mid lane in him being taken away from Arrogant Owls here. And at this point, the map is open so much more for TFC, and it's going to be a bit more concerning for Arrogant Owls to try and find avenues back into the game.
Yeah, it really is. It's so tough to try and play this position, especially when you're up against this Victor, who off of that fight, going to be close to 3 items, actually with 2,200 in hand, should be picking up that next item and will be getting that much stronger. And this Sivir as well, sitting on a healthy chunk of change, will finish off that Infinity Edge as those item spikes are reached. We're in the late game, and TFC, I think, one of, if not the best late game team in this league.
Oh, absolutely, and this is definitely a different Sivir from the previous game. This is a Sivir who has gotten the gold that she needs, who has gotten the items that allow her to just take over a bunch of fights there. You saw how the bouncing blades can absolutely demolish a team if they group up enough, and of course, it's going to be so much worse now that the Infinity Edge has been completed, and with the double longsword in inventory, probably going to be working towards that Lord Doms, and that will truly mean that a lot of the damage coming from the Sivir will be monumental.
Yeah, it's practically true damage because Jordale, the only tank, but still building into that Anathemas means that you'll have that reduced damage from one member, but it means that you can either pick the Victor or you can pick the Sivir, and the other will just tear through your team. As we can see, the Bear Rider forced to throw, I wasn't sure if it needed to throw down the Frozen Bola, but still felt threatened enough to drop it.
Yeah, and that's because there's no vision. Of course, we know from our own spectator cheater vision that there was no one in range. There was actually just the Victor and the Sejuani solo, but no vision means that you kind of have to assume that if they're walking up that aggressively, there has to be someone in the vicinity, but of course, the Victor can just do that at this point in the game. That's a 3-item Victor with a stopwatch in hand. They don't really care about any threats that you pose.
Yeah, do not care one bit, and said that stopwatch going to be huge as bot kill that we dove onto. AD jumping in. Won't be enough though as Flash is back. Jackie Chan's into the team fight, drops that twisting advance and has the phase rush to slide on forward. As On the Hunt was popped, they hunted down a couple members and are now potentially just looking to end the game. Random Capitals is recalling. This is a tight position, but a big wave of supers, all 5 members strong. Who needs Baron? Who needs a dragon? All that they care about, all that TFC cares about is staying undefeated, continuing their trend of being the strongest team in the league. And while the Amumu is traded off, it's in response for another tank, and that will mean this game does not end quite yet. The wave clear a little too strong, and the revive's going to be coming through, but still, this is TFC's game to lose.
Oh, absolutely. It is up to them to decide whether or not they are going. And the odd thing is that it's 4K, but yet it feels so much worse, and that's because TFC knows how to take a winning advantage and press it in some of the best ways possible, and it's just shown through the fact that you have a Sivir, you have a Victor, and at this point in the game, yeah, this is not the worst lead we've seen in this entire set. But my god, does it feel like it.
Yeah, it feels just completely suffocating, honestly, for this squad. As Baron vision cleared away, Azir and Kai'Sa are going to take this very, very quickly. They might just opt to start it. There is an inkling from the side of Team Fried Chicken. This might be the way that the Owls find their way back into the game. All 5 members are here pretty quick. Azir just shredding this Baron down. It's already at 2k. It's going to go the way of the Owls, but can they find the fight, or can they find the escape? Prince going to be sacrificed for the safety of the rest of the team.
We'll collect the Baron. That does mean that a lot of the pushing potential from TFT is limited to an extent. They do still have Victor Sivir, so waves were a question of do they even exist in front of this. But with the Baron, they should be able to have some level of stickiness once they spawn. But with one Nexus Tower available, they're just going to 5-man down mid and look to try and end the game. Azir Tower being dropped down, adding a little bit extra. Will it be enough to actually dissuade TFC?
I don't know. Is Vodkill just angling for one or two lasers to land to find a little bit of that opening? Although no extra damage going on to this tower quite yet. This is that dance, the end game dance, and it seems that TFC are opting not to play, and that pillar might slow them down, but it still should just be a walkout, as that Baron, not going to be used for any aggressive purposes, really just is keep this game alive, as Rodale wants to keep it going. No stun onto Argru will mean no further engagement.
Yeah, hop, skip, and a jump away, and you'll get out of the frozen bola. No need to get caught by the Glacier Prison there, and you'll be more than happy to just walk away, as bot lane tower will be taken. They're going to take this a little bit slower, a little bit more methodically. The inhibitor has respawned for the mid lane, so no super is going to be pushing in there, so they will have to go and collect that mid wave once again if they want it to have any semblance of push potential. But it looks like they'll just stay sieging this bot lane tower and just try and wait out this Baron by saying, yeah, sure, you got the Baron, cool, but you're not going to be able to do anything with it, and you just have to weather this storm.
Exactly. It's all about weathering the storm. It's all about buying just that much more time, allowing the Azir to scale up a little bit. Now a 4-item Kaisa. We'll have plenty of on-hit options going that Bork Ginso's build. But still, this Sivir is such a monster. This Victor, one laser really does feel like that death laser.
Absolutely, and that will be 4 items for the Victor. Backing to probably get some more components there, and we'll see what he actually builds into next. Probably going to be more damage, and it's honestly up to him what he wants to, but instead will be the Verdant Barrier, looking for the Banshees, making sure just, I'm not getting caught. There's no way. So, good respect to the fact that there's a Sejuani ultimate, there's a Nautilus hook, Nautilus ulti. It's a lot of ways to get caught, so do like it. You already do enough damage anyway, so why do you need to do more?
Exactly. Want to stay safe, want to make sure that nothing goes awry, as in just 20 seconds, that Baron buff for the Owls will be expiring. And now looking at this game, with how well TFC have been playing it, where do you think the Owls can try to look to punish and find a way back into this game?
They need to get a pick onto either the Victor or the Sivir. That is a lot of standing gold, and not only that, is a key member for the team of TFC. So if they can get a pick onto that, probably that'll be the Victor, because that's the one that has to push out the side lane. Sivir will be usually surrounded by the Amumu, maybe even the... But if you can get a pick onto the Victor, collect that gold, it removes one giant threat from the board. And you can then try and play throughout a 4v5 that way. It still becomes iffy though, because of course this is a 4-item Sivir, and that can definitely shred through teams if given the opportunity. So it really comes down to smart play. But speaking of smart play, here's a pick.
Here's a potential pick, but there's no damage. They're all by the Gnar. Not sure what the decision making was, as your damage threats are on the wrong side. Shurima shuffle onto Organize, but that's not who you wanted to clip. Jincell on the Sivir, gonna dip and dive away, barely staying alive, as now this is gonna be a kill onto Zen. And while the Sivir does go down to the Kaisa, there's just 2 members left standing.
Oh, that was a bit confusing there. Definitely a miscommunication on the part of Arrogant Owls. I definitely thought that there was going to be the Kaisa and the Trundle following up, as they were definitely in the vicinity, but instead they went to try and kill the Narv. So it looks like we weren't on the same page for that call, and that definitely cost them, because that would have been an incredible pick to get and an incredible fight win there, especially since this Mountain Dragon would have been the reward for it.
Exactly. They would have been able to deny the soul, as now this TFC are going to be that much more unkillable. This Sivir that much safer. This Victor that much harder to lock down, as it is just going to come down to execution at the end of the day. And we know TFC are one of the best teams at executing in this league.
Yeah, 4-stack Mountain Soul is going to be so difficult to try and break through here. And it's going to be a question of, can they find the DPS? Can the tanks buy the time to actually allow for the DPS? If you look at the items for both the carries on the side of Arrogant Owls, actually pretty good at shredding through a lot of these tanks, but they need the time to do that. And it's a question of, can the Trundle get tanky enough by ulting the Maokai? Can the Sejuani face tank enough? And I don't think they're at that point yet.
I don't think so either, as that was a good idea. They swept out, knew that there was no vision on this 3-man death ball in the Kaisa, Sejuani, and the Nautilus, but a key scanner out of Jackie Chan is going to mean no one's going down quite yet, as Baron will be coming onto the Rift in just 30 seconds. The bod kill with that completed Banshees, that much harder to handle, as that reaction says it all. Just one tick of the laser is a third of this Trundle's health.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say, can this Trundle get tanky enough? Because that's certainly not tanky enough.
He got a no magic mantle, it's fine.
He does have a null magic mantle, so I think it'll weather something. He does have the Merc Treads as well, so I think he'll be fine. But looks like in the meantime, even though the Trundle will be fine, I don't know if this Baron will be for the next few minutes, because Sivir Victor can also do Barons pretty fast.
That they can, and the side of the Owls know it. There's a Mountain Soul, a Sivir, and a Victor that you've got to get through if you want to try and bring this game back. It's all about pulling the trigger and onto the right member. Twisting Advance dropped. The Amumu caught, but stuns 3. The carries for both sides still safe. Jackie Chan getting shredded in the back line. Jordalian Zen trying to buy time, but still that Kaisa and the Azir couldn't free fire quickly enough, as now gonna have to kite away from 2. Argru goes back into Mini. It's a 2 for 2 so far. Both teams knowing that this could be the deciding moment of this series. The Owls recognizing it could be their last game in Risen, and the side of TFC recognizing that this might just be the end to their perfect season. Could impact those seedings as, oh, what a chunk onto Capitals.
Yeah, it's so close. I mean, it was such a good fight win for the Arrogant Owls. They got them off the Baron. They're actually going to start up themselves. It's Kaisa here. This is going to melt.
This is going to melt indeed, but the response is coming around. Argru back to Mega's going to get a big Gnar, or unless the response is quick enough, but the Kaisa's going to get killed. Zen all alone, and with no MR to really speak of, will get shut down, and that Baron call, while solid, while able to bring them from the brink, was just not fast enough, as Capitals will escape. But 5 members strong. TFC want to end this game. The missed hook might mean that actually that death charge won't be enough either. Just a couple more slaps from the Bear Rider, and that'll be a kill onto the Gnar. So taking away a little front line, but still, there are TFC members in the base.
Yeah, and that was a good idea, but the respawn timers were still there. They thought that they had a full reset on TFC, but no, they just went to clear waves, and they went to go sort of wait their time out, and of course they're back in time to actually respond to it, but
big curse of the sad mummy. It takes the tanks, it takes the team, and it takes the game, as the most kill-intensive one of this series is going to go the way of TFC, as they will stay undefeated, and the Owls will unfortunately be ending their Risen season here.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on the fact that I don't think it's necessarily too guaranteed that they end it, because there are still a couple teams with 3 wins, so Arrogant Owls, assuming that they do get granted that extra win and sit at 3 and 4 as their final score, it is possible to look at some tiebreakers, or looking at statistics, I believe is how it's usually decided, looking at game time specifically, and it's not over for them, but it definitely does hurt their chances quite a bit.
Yeah, it is hurting them quite a bit, as now the series is over and we can bring Slayer back in one final time.
Wow, guys, that was I was talking about it, in chats with our lovely producer while the game was running, but that was one of the greatest dominant games and I think series I've seen in regular season play in a very long time. Being a part of Risen, just absolutely back and forth at points. There was points of the game where I not only heard both of you talk about it, but I had the momentum feeling that either one of these teams could win. They both had the late game avenues to win this game as well. In funnily enough, both the same roles when we talked about the Azir and the Victor versus the Kaisa and the Sivir. So many parallels, but at the end of the day, it is the Team Fried Chicken squad that is going to punch their ticket to 6-0. And Graham, there's a lot to highlight from this game, right? It nearly goes 40 minutes, 47 kills, but talk me through some of the miscues we maybe saw from the Arrogant Owls. And I don't know if you remember this, but the one play before Mountain Soul was secured, the kind of off-sync communication for going for picks on the bot side.
Yeah, and I think that to me was probably the worst that Arrogant Owls has looked in that entire set. And it was that one instance, not even like a stretch of a minute. That one decision was probably one of the worst decisions that they've made in this entire set. And I think it did cost them a lot because not communicating, hey, we need to go on the bot lane, we need to get the Sivir out because there's no one there. And then having the Trundle Kai'Sa say, oh, the Gnar is on the side lane, we have our, we can probably go and look for that. But the disconnect was extremely prevalent, and it looked really awkward to try and fight. And of course, it still ended up decently fine in terms of kill for kill trade, but the Mountain Soul goes over, and maybe if they were on the same page, if they went for the Sivir and they went to go and work with that Nautilus and they communicated properly, it would have looked much different.
Yeah, you can only imagine, right? I mean, Kaisa Killer Instinct has a pretty big range. Should be able to jump all the way back over there instead of chase the Gnar. There's just so many what ifs that go into that entire game. But J Turbo, resiliency reigned true here in the final game, and you could tell the Team Fried Chicken certainly brought that resiliency in the 40-minute game win, and even in the series after dropping a pretty harsh second game.
Yeah, it did just come down to Team Fried Chicken having that team experience, having that team coordination, and as Graham mentioned, just not making those same kind of mistakes that we saw out of the Owls. It was really unfortunate because I wanted to see them win this series. I wanted to see them in playoffs. I wanted to see the squad continue, and I really hope that they can get to some playoff potential and have those tiebreakers work out because it's a very fun team to watch because besides Oblivion, they're the only other team in this entire league who have even taken a game off of TFC. And that is something to be proud of in itself. And it also just speaks to some of the depth of this tournament that a team like the Owls isn't able to make it through. But again, as you mentioned, it was all about the resiliency. It was all about those late game decisions and making sure that you didn't fall flat at the very end.
Well, they certainly did not. It got dicey at points, but Team Fried Chicken did punch a very big staple win towards the end of the regular season. Well, we're wrapping up here with the Divine League Showcase, but one more thing to touch on here. There's a lot. This is going to be a hard one to pick. I like to do this every week that I'm on for Premade Dominate. Just talk about an MVP of the series. Certainly a lot to pick from because it was a 3-game series. There was a couple long-ish games. J Turbo, I'm going to go back to you. What do you think in here with a series MVP?
Oh, series MVP. Putting me on the spot. I'm going to have to say it's a toss-up for me between the Bodkill and Jincell because both of them, it was their positioning that kept them going. It was the lane dominance, I think, out of the Bodkill in game 1 that got them such a strong start. But then also it was through the Bodkill, I think, with that Echo being so weak that they fell in game 2. Whereas also in game 2, we saw a similar story. Jincell on the Sivir getting caught out quite a bit and just falling behind and falling flat. But I think that if the Bodkill was a little stronger in game 2, that Sivir would have brought it back and they could have had a shot. So because, and this is kind of weird, because both of them had pretty comparable results and pretty comparable impact in both games, but the one that they lost was the one where the Bodkill was that much further behind, I'm giving it to the Bodkill.
Wow. The logic checks out. I like it. It's a little bit of a thinker, but I like the backing. So the Bodkill gets the vote from J Turbo. Graham, are you rolling with J Turbo here, or do you have a bit of a different thought with who you might name for a series MVP?
No, I had a sort of idea plan. If Arrogant Owl, I did want Zen would actually be my player of the series, but to pick from the winning team, of course, to reward them for playing extremely well, I'd have to say Bodkill, and it does follow along the same sort of reasoning that John laid out for us. They had incredible game 1 and 2, and game 1 and 3, excuse me. The game 2 did look shaky, but I think out of the Bodkill and Jincell, I believe that the Bodkill still piloted the Echo relatively well, and I don't think there was much more that he could have done. Probably look for more picks around the mid-game, mid-early game, and try to rotate with the jungler that way. But to me, it just looked much smoother and a much cleaner.
Well, sounds like the bod kill gets the final vote. I will put in a special shout out to Argru up in the top lane because in the 2 wins, we did talk about the Urgot. It looked pretty shaky at points against the Aatrox, but he actually came back around and had a ton of impact towards the team fights in that game, despite them being down early. And I don't know how many times you heard J Turbo shout about the Gnar ultimates we saw from him in game 3 to set up some of those huge swing team fights. So shout out to the top laner for the big team fight impact. But the bod kill will be our series MVP for this week 6 showcase of the Premade Dominant League. Now, guys, any final thoughts as we are getting close to playoffs? Week 7 is the final week. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I mean, at least for me, it is just that TFC, they've been put to the test these last 2 weeks. They show that gods can bleed, but also they currently are, I think, the gods of this league. They took down Oblivion. They weathered the storm against the Owls, and it really does show that their team coordination, their team play is something to watch out for. And currently, I have them as my playoff favorites for taking the whole thing, but we'll see if some dark horses show up throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think I follow along the same lines. I think Team Fried Chicken is definitely going to be a team. I'm very interested to see how Team Fried Chicken matches up with. I believe Heartbreakers is the #1 seed on the other side of the bracket, or the other group rather. And I think we only looked at them once on a broadcast beforehand, and they also looked extremely good. So I do want to see a matchup between those two, and I think that those two are going to be the contenders for the end of the playoffs run. But we'll have to see. I do want to see Owls in the playoffs. Their playstyle kind of grew on me, especially through this set. So hopefully we will find them on the other side of it. But for now, they will be sitting at 3 and 4 unless something changes their placing. Because again, for those of you who don't know, one of the teams dropped out, and that was going to be the Owls' last matchup. And of course, for now, they have been marked 2-0. So we'll have to see. We'll have to check in on them later if we're going to be casting the playoffs. But I think that's gonna be my exciting one to see.
Great job, guys, bringing it a lot more big picture. Yeah, I do want to preface that really quickly before we get out of here. I know I kind of talked like the idea of the arrogant Owls being 3 and 4 eliminates them. Statistically, it doesn't. It's just a very, very low chance.
Right.
In case you missed it earlier, I'll go through it very quickly. There are 4 teams, or actually, I forget how to count sometimes. 3 teams have 3 and 2 in front of them that still have matches going on right now and matches next week for week 7 to play. So the name of the game for the Arrogant Owls, the problem is their playoff hopes are out of their hands. They have no more control over what they can do to make the playoffs. And to go to the other side of the bracket, you guys talk about, Team Fried Chicken 6-0, but Heartbreakers and SDC Death Guards are not only 5 and 1 respectively in their own group, but I know for a fact they are mainstays of the Premade Dominant and a couple of Risen leagues. So 2 very solidified teams will build up for a very hype playoffs. But we do have one more week to get through, and that does mean that since we're done with week 6, that is all for our broadcast for Premade Dominant to kind of wrap up the weekend. Special shout-outs once again, as always, to our amazing casting duo next to me, Jay Turbo and Graham, always with the beautiful analysis and calling just so many amazing team fights, especially this series. And you also have to shout out our amazing producer behind the scenes, the extraordinaire, making sure you see everything on the screen in clear picture is Snow. So Snow, shout out to you as always. That's going to do it, though, for the Premade Dominant Week 6 showcase. Make sure to stay locked to Risen on all socials to keep up on your Divine League, Giraffe League, and, of course, Unstoppable and many others going on all week long. But for now, signing out for one more time. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week.